right now on YouTube and Twitch TV simultaneously. Thank you for joining me. It is the month of September, ladies and gentlemen. Current date, September 9th, 2024. Spooky season is around the corner. It's already spooky season for me. You know that. If you know me personally, every day is Halloween for me, basically. So, ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves. We are going to get started with season 7 of the tonight. Let me switch over to the live feed here on Twitch so everybody can see what's going on at home. A little bit of a dark and stormy night here in Buffalo, New York. Buffalo Bills won yesterday. My Pittsburgh Steelers won as well. So a good Sunday in terms of football for me. The Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers got the W. The reason I'm not going to be watching Monday night New York Jets game later when that starts at 8 o'clock tonight. New York Jets. So the Buffalo Bills got a W. The Pittsburgh Steelers got a W. Hopefully the New York Jets can get a W tonight. Personally, when it comes to wrestling, I'm a booker more than anything else. So WWE just hasn't been getting it done for me. AEW has been on fire recently. I've definitely been more of an AEW guy, if I do say so myself. Um, we're sipping on a little bit of Gatorade tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Orange Gatorade, nothing fancy. Classics, just the throwbacks. But that is the drink of choice for tonight. So later tonight, going to be watching the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. They're playing against a good team, too, the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers were just in the Super Bowl last season, so hoping for a good game tonight with the Jets. So the thing that we have to talk about before we get started, we are currently on Season 7 here in September. I believe it was going to be Season 5. I was incorrect. It's actually Season 7 right now, and we have about 19 episodes in Season 7, but there's actually only going to be 9 streams, including this one. So it's a little worrying, but it definitely has to keep reconnecting for some reason on YouTube. I apologize to the people watching at home for the technical difficulties, but hopefully that figures itself out. So, 9 episodes for September. We are going to do 9 of Season 7, The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob. And then when October comes around, we will do 7 streams for the Halloween specials. That's going to include Season 5, the Halloween Hootenanny, Season 8 with the entire stream, because that would suck. So like I said, Season 12, 2021, the Haunted Halloween Hangout for 2022, and then Halloween for 2023. So those will be all of our Halloween specials of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob. And then in November, we will get into the Thanksgiving specials. I'm actually deciding to do the night marathon for this month of November. I decided to include that as well because there's not a whole lot of specials for Thanksgiving, at least when it comes to The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob. So I decided to include the night marathon with that. There will be 5 streams total in the month of November for that. And then once December comes around, December 2024, we will do all of the Christmas specials, which we will also have 5 streams of. That will include Season 6, 2019, the Red Christmas special, Season 9, 2020, Joe Bob Saves Christmas, Ghoultide Get Together in 2022, and then Creepy Christmas in 2023. And then, of course, that will be the end of 2024 for Ivan and also for the year. And then once January of 2025 comes around, we will do Season 11, which takes place in 2021 for Joe Bob and the Last Drive-In crew. So there will be a total of 9 episodes for that, or 9 streams, I should say, similar to what we're doing this month in September of 24. And then after January, when we get done with Season 11, we will include in February all of the Valentine specials. So there will be approximately 4 streams for that. So we pretty much have a good amount of the last drive-in with Joe Bob still to watch, all the way up until February of 2025. So I got the entire schedule here, got it all planned out. You know, your man's is always going to come prepared. I always come with the strategy, ladies and gentlemen: ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves. Your boy always has a strategy, always know what my next move is going to be. But that is going to be the entirety of everything that we are going to watch on the remaining episodes of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob. So tonight, like I said, we are starting season 7. We are going to do episodes 1 and 2 tonight, which, if you give me 1 second here, I will find out what episodes those include. So, episode 1 is going to be Chopping Mall, will be Blood Sucking Freaks. It's currently about to be 5:50 p.m. here in Buffalo, New York. So I do want to make this stream a little bit quick, like I said, because tonight I'm trying to make that 8 o'clock Monday night football game. The New York Jets playing. So the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers won yesterday. Hopefully the New York Jets can get a win tonight. Skipping over Monday Night Raw. Honestly, I'm probably going to be skipping over a lot of WWE shit until fucking Monday Night Raw airs on Netflix, because that's probably the only time shit's ever going to change and go into the direction that I'm kind of looking for. Um, but until then, I mean, and even then, you know, once they kind of get the Netflix deal going and they do air in 2025 in January, that'll pretty much be also on the road to WrestleMania. So things should start to get a little bit better around then, which is kind of when I want to tune in. I'm not going to Monday Night Raw, or I think it's Friday Night SmackDown when they come to Buffalo, New York in November. I really wanted to go to the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs game, but unfortunately, that is the most expensive game on the schedule for Buffalo Bills tickets. They want like 1,400 just for 4 tickets. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go to that. Of course, that ain't happening. Would have loved to see Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills play against jabroni ass Rudy Poo, Patrick Mahomes, and the Kansas City Chiefs, our rivals here in the AFC, especially in the playoffs more recently than not. But that's pretty much what's been happening. So, ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves, thank you for joining me here on a dark and stormy night in Buffalo, New York. We got thunder. Maybe that's also why our connection is a little bit foggy right now. I couldn't tell you. It could just be because I'm trying to stream off of a $60 piece of shit Android phone. Maybe that's the reason. Who knows? I couldn't really tell you if it's the thunderstorms, if it's the piece of shit Android phone. Maybe it's just the internet in general. Could be all of the above. But all I do know is that we are starting season 7 tonight in September of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob. So, ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves, thank you so much for spending this Monday evening with me. As I said, spooky season is around the corner. Spooky season. But we are going to get right into the action here. Just the movies Chopping Mall. And ladies and gentlemen, I will let the man, the myth, the legend himself now, Joe Bob, take it away.
When people say, Joe Bob, what's the best horror film? I always say, are you trying to get me beat up? I always say, what's your favorite horror film? And then you can choose anything, blood-sucking freaks, and people just think you're odd, but they won't pummel you.
Okay, we're not going to play that audio just in case YouTube doesn't like that kind of music, which they usually don't. But you know what I do want to do, ladies and gentlemen? I do want to give you a little bit of a room tour while I have a chance here. you can check out some of the room. So here's like our streaming setup. Got some stuff. Nice little knickknacks. All the memorabilia. We got some plaques over there. Jim Kelly, Buffalo Sabres. A little bit of a room tour going on here. There's the bed. There's the M&M poster. Got some swords over there. There's my Selma Hayek poster. Behind the air conditioner right now, there's some of the knife collection you can see. Gengar chilling down there. Don't know how good you can see Gengar. It's a little bit dark underneath the table, but Gengar is chilling. We're back. We're back. Joe Bob's starting up the stream here. Let me pause it. Let me pause it. Let me rewind, chat. We'll get all set up here. Don't you worry. So there you go. It's a little bit of the table for you guys. Hopefully when I get Bearded Dragons again, we can include them in the streams. There's some of the sneaker collection down there. Again, our little streaming setup. Nothing too fancy. Love this chair. This chair has been absolutely phenomenal. I want good quality on this image though. I want you guys to really see. I do recommend the chair. I do recommend the chair. So there you go. That's the chair. And maybe now you can see Gengar. Can you see him chilling down there, chat? I think so. So there's a little bit of our sword collection. All the good stuff. There you have it. Just a little bit of a room tour going on here. Nothing too crazy. PlayStation 5 back there. Don't know how good you can see that, but maybe you can. It's back there though. Probably be able to see it if I did this. Better angle maybe at it. There you see it. So, that's a little bit of the room tour here. Wanted to do that while we still got some daylight going on here. Just wanted to give everybody a quick little bedroom tour. Little setup. Okay. And we should be just about ready now. It's spooky, chat. But yeah, hopefully when I get Bearded Dragons again, they'll be able to get some camera time here. Don't know when I'll be able to afford Bearded Dragons again, but hopefully soon. I'm hoping soon. I do miss having Bearded Dragons.
Well, I'm back with a second season of The Last Drive-In, and when you start a new season, you want to do a movie that has gravity, seriousness, a movie that plumbs down to the bone marrow of the culture, a film that speaks to us from the moral high ground and humbles us with its cinematic complexity, and at the same time, its romantic grandeur. You know the movie I'm talking about. I'm talking about Chopping Mall. Right, Darcy?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Darcy the Mail Girl is here to field your tweets, your emails, your Instas, your Facebooks, mingle with your organized chat groups. How many live chat groups do we have now, Darcy?
No idea.
All right. And Darcy is a fan of Chopping Mall. Am I right?
Heck yeah.
All right. So she may know more about the movie than I do, although I do know the director, Jim Wynorski, and the producer, Julie Corman. And come to think of it, I know two of the actors, Kelly Maroney and Barbara Crampton. So I have resources on this one. But before we start talking about homicidal robots in a 1986 shopping mall in Southern California, I wanted to inform the Last Drive-In audience about some of the scientific advances over the last 30 years in robots in general and in sex robots in particular. Because this movie has robots, it has sex, it does not have sexual robots. But if you remade it today, it probably would have sexual robots. And the reason I know this is that this scientist in Silicon Valley recently warned the world that the new sex dolls are getting out of control and they might be dangerous. He said they have such complicated computer code in there that if they're programmed to like give you a hug, the code might get scrambled up and they can crack a rib or start strangling you. So eerily reminiscent of something that happens in the very movie that we're about to watch. So this made me look into it, of course, and come to find out, the future is now when it comes to sex dolls. The much lampooned blow-up party doll is now the rechargeable Playboy Playmate, because right now you can buy sexually alluring robots that kiss, talk, hug, remember everything you tell them and incorporate it into their responses. That right there is worth several $1,000s. They wink, they nod, they turn their heads, they talk dirty, they make inarticulate sex sounds, they writhe in ecstasy, they have orgasms. Okay, they're fake orgasms, but men never know anyway, right? They even have, quote, lifelike body heat maintained at a constant 98.6. Now, the prices, if you're wondering about this, are anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000. Now, I'm not sure what additional features you get for the extra cash or what features are lame if you go cheap with it. But if you're going to go this route, I can't imagine anybody skimping on the extras. But the websites are all about the skin. They say the skin feels like real skin. They harp on the skin so much that these companies probably need to be investigated to find out if they're robbing fresh graves. At any rate, the more stuff she can do, the more lifelike she is, and the closer you get to that deluxe $5,000 model, the better you're able to sustain the male illusion that you do have a girlfriend, because it is a male illusion. And here's the good thing about this. I think we may be on the cusp of a final solution for the incel problem. The incels are those guys who call themselves involuntary celibates because they consider themselves undateable because nobody could ever possibly want to have sex with them. And by the way, this is not true, but that's a topic for another day. Nobody is undateable, okay? I'm not going to go into the whole incel playbook, but basically these are guys who believe that A, all women are gold-digging whores, B, they won't sleep with me because I'm ugly, and C, I want one of the gold-digging whores to be my girlfriend forever. Now, I don't think I'm exaggerating the twisted logic to say that the incels believe that all three parts of that are true, and I would even add a fourth one. D, women the incels consider ugly are not welcome. And then there's another layer of emotion underneath all this, and it goes something like this. That guy the beautiful girl is dating, they call them Chads. That Chad the beautiful girl is dating is an obnoxious creep, and she should dump him and love me because I would treat her better. So all of these contradictory impulses could be solved overnight. In touch with Maya, Michelle, Angelina, Amber, Natalia, Olivia, Lucy, Julia, Summer, Grace, Mercedes, Victoria, Violet, Pearl, Coco, Marlon, Jasmine, Crystal, Cindy, Cherie, Brittany, Anna, Agnes, Monique. All of those are off-the-shelf sex robots currently for sale with various types of bodies and hair, and of course, vagina. Shaved or unshaved, your choice. And yes, we do have to talk about this. I said I was going to talk about it. Let's get down to the nitty on the sex dolls. If you look at what the most popular features are on these dolls, it seems that what most men want is a D cup, a petite girl, 5'1" or 5'2", 70 to 90 pounds. That is really small. Long, fluffy hair, waist, and a 6.6-inch deep vagina. Yes, it gets that technical. I'm sorry to make you consider this, but if one of the standard models does not satisfy you, there is a build your own option to create that perfect life companion, which with proper maintenance will never steal money, insult your manhood, or refuse sex. So to the incel who says, well, no, I want a real woman who likes me for me, the answer is, well, no, you don't. You don't even like yourself. This is one thing you notice about the incel groups on Reddit is they're relentlessly focused on physical appearance. So guys, here it is, pure physical appearance. Good right now, it can only get better. The manufacturers offer free lifetime software updates as new features are introduced. Question in a way that pleases you, and since she has a 24/7 Wi-Fi connection, you could probably even teach her to like all your woman do. And I'm sorry, incels, you can't do this. It's dangerous. Although I expect that to be incorporated into future updates. You know, teach her who's boss if she doesn't laugh at your jokes. But there are some disturbing questions in the FAQs of these websites, all related to fears of your girlfriend falling apart on you, such as, can you pull or bite on a robot companion's nipples hard without fear of tearing them? And the answer is, within reason. Okay, and what if I don't fit? The answer is, use a lubricant. She's very elastic. And can a robot companion support it enough to do doggy style? Answer, yes, but you better put pillows under the upper body or bend her over a table or chair. That's their suggestion. And can I bathe or shower with my robot companion? Answer, yes, but keep water off the head to avoid brain damage and the upper back to avoid damage to the charging port. I got your charging port right here, baby. No, that's not where the charging port is. One item that struck me as robot cruelty, actually, was the airline traveling case. If you want to take your girlfriend on the road with you, you have to power her down and fold her into a $400 compartment that will not fit in the overhead bin. And she's not entitled to ride with the dogs and the cats. So anyway, there are even more frightening possibilities in the things that could go wrong category. What if a joint breaks? It says, call our technical department and they'll send a replacement joint. And they will you until you successfully install the replacement joint. What if a finger wire pokes through the skin? Ooh, push it back inside the silicone and patch the hole with a silicone repair kit. If I buy the suntan version, will the tan ever rub off? Only with prolonged dry humping. What if I accidentally rip her flesh? Commercial grade silicone caulking can be found at your local hardware store. Can I use cosmetics on my companion? Yes to liquid eyeliner, blush, eyeshadow, powder, eyebrow pencil, and lipstick. No to oil-based or cream-based makeup. And this is perhaps the most disturbing one of all. Can I send my robot back to you for repairs? No, due to health concerns for our employees. In other words, they won't touch the doll after you have touched the doll. This should make the incel happy, though, because she can never be unfaithful. You know, if you send her back to the warehouse, who knows what random Chad she might sleep with. It's actually better this way. You're the husband, boyfriend, the doctor, the stylist, the Uber driver, and the greatest sexual athlete in the history of the world. So everybody wins. You know, you're probably going to have a problem introducing her to mom at Thanksgiving, but maybe not. But yeah, okay. We actually have a real-life hottie in the house tonight, one of the stars of Chopping Mall, and I'm not going to reveal that right away. You're wondering, which of the 5 or 6 hotties in Chopping Mall have we corralled in ruining her career by coming on this show tonight? Well, we'll get to that in the first break. And then later tonight, for the second movie, I think we might just be welcoming Chris Jericho, the hottest
Jericho is here,
in the
Fozzie.
world right now, longtime horror fan. Darcy has been stalking the man to get him to agree to come here. Didn't you? Matches, holding up signs, come on the last drive-in. Did he notice?
He noticed.
Okay, great. Right now we're going to watch Chopping Mall. And I have to say, you know, I thought this movie would launch Susie Slater into drive-in superstardom. Kelly Maroney was already a drive-in superstar. But one of the best reasons to watch this is for the debut performance of Susie Slater's Garbanzas right before they get lasered by a killer maniac robot in an exploding head scene in the Galleria Shopping Center. Susie could have been a gratuitous bosom drive-in queen, but she had a very brief career. She got stuck in the flick just long enough to become a grease spot on the linoleum, but plenty long enough to make us remember her aardvarking scene at the Furniture King. So basically what we got here is 3 security guard robots that go berserk during a lightning storm and start using their lasers and throwing stars and tranquilizer guns and F-16 fighter planes to kill teenagers that they catch making the sign of the triple humped squid puppy after after they sneak into the mall. And after each body demolition, they say, "Thank you, have a nice day." In other words, spam in an atrium, and that's the whole plot. Let's go to the drive-in totals. We have 10 dead bodies, 3 dead killbots, 8 breasts,
8 breasts,
blood, 1 exploding head, 3 twisted metal. Gratuitous Paul Bartel, Mary Warnoff, and Dick Miller. Fold-out foo, pastel laser bolt foo, turpentine foo. Drive-In Academy Award nominations for Jim Wynorski, the writer-director, for casting Kelly Maroney in the lead because he wanted to date her. Tony O'Dell as Nerdy Ferdy for saying, okay, let's party. For saying, when I'm happy, everybody. Todd as Rick for saying, if we get out of here alive, you owe me a 6-pack. Barbara Crampton as Susie the Whiner for saying, but Greg needs me, and then getting French fried on camera. Carrie Emerson as Linda for saying, I'm sorry for getting hysterical. I guess I'm just used to being chased around a mall in the middle of the night by killer robots and selling that line. And Kelly Maroney, drive-in queen of the 80s, the woman who put the K in Scream Queen as the romantic lead, the final girl, and the badass with a road flare stuffed down her bra. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. Joe Bob says, check it out.
2.5 stars.
Wow.
Chopping mall.
You know, the robots in this movie, they seem to be male, although I think it would be scarier if they were female. Because, you know, like it's a mall, right? So, you know those lipstick lizards at Macy's who work the cosmetics counter? You know, you have to pass them when you go into Macy's. You can't avoid them, and they just pounce on you. They want to spray something made out of rhododendrons on your elbow and say, for that special lady in your life, you know, go ahead, smell it. Go ahead. No, go ahead. And so you smell your elbow, and then they tell you it's called Reckless by Dolce & Gabbana. You know, she's going to love it. Valentine's Day is coming up. They always say this, even if Valentine's Day is not coming up, you know. And didn't Dolce & Gabbana get divorced, though? Did Dolce dump Gabbana, or did Gabbana dump Dolce? I don't know. I need to start watching Entertainment Tonight more often. Anyway, these women are vicious and fierce and scary, so if they were robots, just stuff that Reckless by Dolce & Gabbana straight down your throat. They wouldn't ask any questions, and then they would roll over your lifeless rhododendron smelling body and ram you through the throat with their spiked high heels or their snakeskin pumps. And this would actually make a good movie. So, Dorothy, write this stuff down.
No. No.
Why doesn't Entertainment ever come to our set?
Because we're not famous?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I want to ask you this. You know how men talk about their penises?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know, penis length is a big thing. But I had never heard of vagina depth until I was studying these fancy sex dolls. So my question is that a thing in the women's locker room? You know, I'm a solid 6.6, but I used to be a 6.4.
Yeah, no. Not at all.
Because apparently somebody got measured.
No. No.
Bad idea to talk about that?
Yeah.
They always want to know how deep the ocean is, if you know what I mean, chat. We got Chris Jericho in the house. Fozzy is here. Lightning storms in the movie. Thunderstorms going on outside.
And of course, that was the legendary character actor Garrett Graham taking the robot blow dart to the neck. Garrett came in and did that little part for $600. This was Jim Wynorski's second film, and he was starstruck by all the B-movie actors he got to work with. And he was especially Garrett Graham because of his sleazy salesman role in Used Cars. But this audience would probably remember him best as Bud the Chud in Chud 2. Yes, there are Chud 2 fans out there. Wonders will never cease. Or for his earlier roles in Phantom of the Paradise. He was the rock star in that. Or the jerk foster dad in Child's Play 2. Anyway, hundreds of roles for Garrett Graham. This movie has a bundle of insider references. In that first scene, we had Paul Bartel and Mary Warnoff as the sarcastic couple, basically doing their roles from Eating Raoul. They were supposed to do another scene where they arrive at the mall with a horse, and they're planning to cut it up and serve it at their diner. But Roger Corman, head of New Horizons Pictures, would not pay for a horse, so the scene got cut. The movie was actually produced by Julie Corman, Roger's wife, and the producer of many of the Stranger films that were put out by New Horizons in the 80s. And the reason is that Julie had a meeting with Vestron Video, and for some reason they specifically wanted a horror movie set in a mall. Jim Wynorski at the time was the publicity director for Roger's company, but he had always wanted to direct something. So Julie told him that if he came up with a script, he would get that job. So Wynorski and his writing partner, Steve Mitchell, wrote the basic outlines of the story in 24 hours. They wrote it in Coco's restaurant in Santa Monica. I don't think it's there anymore, but it was an all-night restaurant. And Wynorski says his two inspirations were the movies Trapped and Gog. You know, I don't know which Trapped he was thinking about. There are 1900 flicks called Trapped. But Gog is the only previous movie about experimental robots running amok that I know of. Richard Egan is the secret agent scientist investigating the secret underground space research facility in Arizona, where outer space aliens are manipulating Gog and Magog, the evil robots that are determined to start nuclear war. So the stakes are a little higher in Gog than they are in Chopping Mall. But Gog and Magog, aren't Gog and Magog the evil superpowers that show up to destroy Israel in the book of Ezekiel? So really, Chopping Mall has biblical origins. So anyway, they wrote the script outline. They gave it to Julie the next day. She approved it. The picture was greenlit for about $800,000, all in 2 weeks' time, and they shot pretty much the whole thing at the Galleria Mall in Sherman Oaks, California. The other Roger is Mel Wells, who was in Attack of the Crab Monsters and Little Shop of Horrors. He's the cook in the diner. And if you were paying really close attention, you might have noticed Angus Scrimm, the tall man in the Phantasm movies. He was asking one of the questions in the opening scene. This movie was made in the heyday of the go-go, let's make a movie 80s, fueled by the VHS revolution, when you could pretty much just make up a movie plot on Monday, get it funded on Tuesday, cast it on Wednesday, and start shooting the movie on Thursday. This script was written in about 4 weeks, and because it was two New Yorkers writing it together, here was their system. Wynorski tells this story. Why don't we take your idea, which I hate, and combine it with my idea, which you hate? So, they originally planned to shoot this at the famous Beverly. They wanted things like insurance there. Can you believe that? So they moved the killer robots to Sherman Oaks, and the rest is history. All right, back to the movie. Did you notice the ghost breasts in the scene where the girls are getting dressed for the party? And by the way, do they have locker rooms in malls where you can get dressed up before sneaking into the furniture store? Where is that scene supposed to take place? Anyway, Allison and Susie, played by Kelly Maroney and Barbara Crampton, two 80s Scream Queen icons, are getting dressed, and some random naked girl walks behind them. I think this was just so that they could up the breast count. You know, I think those are uncredited breasts. And how about the bikini girls who, for no apparent reason, all get on the mall escalator with the lead bikini girl, played by the great Toni Naples, star of many Wynorski films like Deathstalker 2, Hard to Die, Transylvania Twist, Dinosaur Islands, Sorceress. And by the way, just so we can get all the girl copy out of the way here at the beginning, and I should explain that term when I worked there. I wrote a Scream Queen article for Playboy, and they called it girl copy because nobody was going to read anything that I said. It was just there so that there would be words around the Kelly Maroney is Allison Parks, which is the name of a real Playboy playmate, actually the Playmate of the Year for 1966. So I guess Jim had a crush on her or something. And then the centerfold that the scientist looks at when he should be working, the first guy to die, that's a woman named Janelle Delabar, because they couldn't afford an actual Playboy or Penthouse centerfold. So Jim just took a picture of an ex-girlfriend. So even more uncredited breasts. So you see the levels of reality we're working with here. Actresses named after playmates, random nativity, girlfriends pretending to be playmates, Carrie Emerson as the babe who can fix cars, convincing her husband to do what she wants by telling him he'll get laid later. You know, that's a bad marriage. You know, wouldn't he already know he can get laid later? Anyway, hormones are raging at the mall because it's a Jim Wynorski flick. I'll never forget that Playboy article. Great girl copy, Joe Bob. That was great girl copy. They don't even show you the photos. Those are secret, you know. Just that was some amazing girl copy that you wrote there, Joe Bob. Well, can I see the girls that go with my article? No. Why would you need to see the girls? Well, I don't know, because I write girl copy. Just write the girl copy, Joe Bob. You know, I wrote another article for Playboy on Vegas table games. Took 2 words in it, Joe Bob. Well, nobody reads the articles, so what's the big deal? This is Playboy, Joe Bob. We're one of the major literary magazines in America. Okay, then can I see the photos? You know, oh no, that's only for people who write girl copy. But I used to write girl copy. They wouldn't let me see the photo. Really? They should let you see those photos when you're writing girl copy. I used to tell people I wrote for Playboy, and they would go, wow, that must be fun. No, not really.
We got Chris Jericho in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Fozzy.
That was, of course, the great Dick Miller as the janitor who gets french fried by the sarcastic robot, using the same character name he used in Bucket of Blood a quarter century earlier. Dick Miller was sort of the ultimate Corman actor. He was in dozens of Corman movies and other low-budget movies. And since Jim Wynorski was a Corman worshiper, he wanted every Corman reference he could make. So Wynorski and his co-screenwriter, Steve Mitchell, had met at a comics convention in New York in the 60s. And both of them ended up heading out to California to seek their fortunes in the movie industry. And it took a while, but Wynorski eventually got an entry-level job at Roger Corman's company. He started editing trailers for him in about 1980. He moved up to director of publicity. That's when I met him. And he made his first film in 1984, The Lost Empire, female gladiators in bikinis. Who could resist that? And then this is his second film. And he would go on to make such low-budget classics as Big Bad Mama 2, Not of This Earth with Tracy Lord, The Return of Swamp Thing, Dinosaur Island, The Haunting of Morella, Transylvania Twist, a bunch of erotic thrillers like Point of Seduction, Body Chemistry 3, not to be confused with Body Chemistry 4, Full Exposure, 7 world premieres on Sci-Fi, including Gargoyle, Curse of the Komodo, Project Viper, Cry of the Winged Serpent, Cobra Gator with Michael Madsen, and then he did a lot of sexually themed movies for TV, Skinamax type stuff. Whenever you see the names Sam Pepperman, Rip Masters, or Harold Blueberry, all of those are Jim Wynorski working in the sex film area. Jim was great. I love that one. House on Hooter Hill, The Breastford Wives, Bear Witch, The Final Chapter, The Witches of Breastwick. One of my favorite titles, The Hills Have Thighs.
Oh my God, I was supposed to be in that one.
You were in The Hills Have Thighs?
Well, I was supposed to be. He kind of canceled transportation on me the night before and said, like, which was like 100 miles away, so.
Oh my God, so you stayed home rather than being Jim Wynorski's The Hills Have Thighs?
He was going like Salvador Ross. I had no idea it was Jim.
What? He was using a fake name when he talked to you?
He was. Salvador Ross, man.
He was using the name Salvador Ross.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't even know that one.
I wasn't about to like travel out there.
Darcy was going to be in The Hills Have Thighs, chat.
Why are we even talking about Wynorski when we have a Wynorski expert in the house?
Yay, indeed.
You know that scene where they drag Ferdy to the party and they introduce him to his date, Allison, and Allison turns around in her chair and you hear the The swelling music indicating love at first sight. That's Allison's theme, and it was written by composer Chuck Serino, just especially for our guest tonight. You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Kelly Maroney. Thank you, Kelly, for coming here. Okay, Kelly.
I got a dinner for you.
Yeah?
Hi.
Hi. That's how you did it in the movie. All right, Kelly. You were a professional blonde hottie in the 80s. You were in all the good stuff. You were in Fast Times at Ridgemont High as the spirit bitch, or whatever. That's not what they call it. What they call it. The spirit bunny. Okay.
Spirit bunny.
Night of the Comet as the little sister in a cheerleader outfit who dances in the mall. All your movies take place in malls, right?
Yeah, but not on purpose. I didn't mean to do that. It
Yeah.
just happened that way.
Okay. And then this notorious role, and Jim Wynorski admits he was one of the hundreds of men who thought you were the hottest woman in the movies. And you guys did end up dating, right?
No.
You didn't end up dating?
Listen, I am the
He's-
victim.
he's
of,
lying
I'm
again.
the victim of Jim Wynorski's branding.
Okay.
We're going to do a thing, like a documentary of him. It
Yeah.
was called. I think they did do it. Papatopoulos.
Yeah.
And the guy calls me up and he goes, "Can I interview you for this?" And I went, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And he goes, "Well, the first he made a mistake. And the first thing he says to me is, well, Jim says that he slept with every single actress he's ever worked with." And I said, "Oh, he does? Well, I don't know that you want." You know, and he went, "No, never mind. You don't have to." And then I thought, I could be in it anyway. I'm sure nobody really. And I called him back. I said, "I'll do it for you because I'm noticeably absent, right?" And he goes, "No, that's okay."
So you said you lied in the interview, or you didn't lie?
I didn't do the interview.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's got to be like a pretty fucking rough reputation to have around Hollywood, right? Like, you just go around telling everybody that you sleep with all your actresses. This guy's a director, like I said. I didn't grow up around the 80s. I haven't really watched that many Werniewski movies, but that's definitely a rough reputation in my eyes to have. I think I would want to be more known for like actual like contributions to horror and dialogue, writing, stuff like that, instead of just telling everybody that a movie for, yeah, slept with all the actresses. He's just bragging about it too, like openly, like.
He didn't want me anymore.
Oh, but,
Yeah.
he said he cast you because he wanted to date
I know
you.
he did, and I read him the riot. I said, "Do you know that doesn't make me sound very good?
Yeah.
I mean, you cast me because you wanted to date me."
Yeah, but you were already notorious because of your soap career, because you were the underage sex pot. You were the
That's what I did.
jailbait girl
Mm-hmm.
on Ryan's Hope. That was your first job, right?
Yeah, my very first job.
Did you know you were jail? How old were you?
I was pretty much jailbait.
You were 15 or
Pretty
something.
much jailbait. Yeah.
And did you? And you knew that was the role. You were jailbait.
No,
You didn't know?
No. They said that I was illegitimate from the Midwest. I wanted to be an actress, and I came looking for my mother. That's what they told me. And then they cut all my hair off, and I was traumatized. Glad to go on national television. But the whole thing is, they didn't want the audience to know what I was going to turn into.
Oh, okay.
So they
So
didn't
that
tell
was
me.
that was a plot arc that
Mhm.
they did.
And then
Okay.
yeah, before you know it, I was ripping
Well-
everybody to pieces.
It definitely sucks, to find out and have to realize that, these young actresses were kind of like taken advantage of in that way. But like I said, they're just working with these sleazy directors, these kind of scumbags in Hollywood. And she even said herself, the only way she really got casted was because the director had a crush on her, just really wanted to date her, or whatever. But that's really unfortunate. I mean, it sounds like some Weinstein tendencies, if you ask me. But you never know, when you're that young and when you're trying to like make these movies, you're never really gonna see what's on the surface. It's always got to be like, those sleazy directors trying to take advantage of you in ways that you probably aren't gonna really understand until you're a little bit older. But it is unfortunate to hear stories like that.
By the end of that run, though, you were well accustomed to being a sex siren. I mean, you had to, at some point, it had to dawn on you. So, which makes this movie a little bit of a departure because you're.
But I mean, at this point in her career, she's at least embraced the appeal, right? And she's like embraced the affection. Maybe she's even showed up at some conventions. I'm not sure. I don't really get the chance to go to too many. It sounds like by now she's kind of whatnot. So at least a positive turnaround, a little bit in that kind of sentence, but it's still sad whenever you hear stories like that of just the young actors being taken advantage of like that.
You're kind of the nerdy girl next door, kind of a girl next door who's a little bit sexually aggressive though with Ferdy, right?
Isn't that weird? I watch that and I think, wow, that kiss that I give him. Well, you know what? You know why that happened like that is because I'm supposed to have that perfect aim, nice shot,
Yeah.
and so part of that bravado of the nice shot, I think, went over into the kiss because I really lay one on him. I didn't know it was going to look like that. Or I
Really?
probably would have toned it down.
So Jim didn't tell you to do that?
No. He didn't tell-
Okay. Well, it works for the movie. Had you actually seen Attack of the Crab Monsters before you got cast?
I watched it because that.
You watched it
we
because
had
of
a
the
whole
movie.
thing about crab monsters that didn't make it in the movie.
Oh, really?
We shot it, but Roger
Like
said
with
no.
double entendres and stuff about the crab monsters?
Well, when Russell Todd dies, I think it's Russell Todd. Yeah, he had Freddie say to me, he gave his life, and me say, I know. And we tried so hard to
Oh,
make
yeah,
that
yeah.
work, right? And,
It was,
and Roger goes, no.
Because that was the last scene in
Right.
Attack of the Crab Monsters.
Right.
Roger didn't really like tributes to his own films in his film.
No, I know. So you
That
can
made
just
it
imagine how this went over.
Yeah. Well, it may be the only time in history that two people have gotten turned on by watching Attack of the Crab Monsters. But if anybody can sell that as a sex fetish, you can sell it,
Well,
Kelly.
thank you. I think it works fine because, you know, who doesn't want a girlfriend that loves horror if you're that kind of a guy?
And yeah, but I think in 1987 or whenever this was, it was not
really-
a common idea.
I know I need a girlfriend that loves horror.
Okay,
Chat.
stay with us. We're going back to the movie. Mike has just been sliced up by a robot in one of the last scenes ever filmed involving an actual cigarette machine in California, no less. Remember how hard it was to pull those silver handles on those things, on the old cigarette machines? Didn't really yank on them to drop those Winstons into the tray. Of course, you don't know that because you were a good girl. You were underage when
I
they
used to
had
smoke a pack and a half a day.
You did?
I was one of those girls that got caught smoking all the time when I was in school.
When you were the sex siren as an underage jailbait girl on
I
Ryan's Hope?
always think, what did I smell like when I had to do, you know, with all that cigarette smoke? I must have been an ashtray, but I didn't have the awareness of it.
So even when you were young, you did that?
Yeah.
Okay. And now Susie Slater has to go searching for a missing boyfriend. And I would say about 75% of the people watching tonight.
And you even hear kind of Kelly admit when she was just talking to Joe Bob there, just from like her smoking experience. She really just admitted like she didn't have the awareness when she was that young. Things, and she was still kind of, you know, coming to an age in a sense, but she really had no awareness of what she was actually doing to herself. And you know, when she gets a little bit older, then it probably dawns on her what actually is happening. But like I said, when you're young like that and you're in Hollywood and you get these opportunities, like I said, all gold doesn't glitter, and every single wallet that's going to give you money isn't necessarily going to be good money. You know what I mean? So
Know exactly what's going to happen next.
you need to know exactly what's going to happen next. Exactly, Joe Bob.
Thanks to Susie Slater. No spoilers, though. Don't say anything. Back to the flick. And Kelly, be honest with me, because being famous as a Lolita type, what was your fan mail like?
You know what? It was very respectful.
Really?
Yes, because I also had guns. It's true.
I need me a girlfriend that loves horror movies. Fucking Darcy was gonna be in The Hills Have Thighs, and the director wasn't even using his real name. He was going by Salvador Ross. It just kind of like rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Like it sounds like some kind of like sleazy dirtbag director name. Salvador Ross. You gotta roll your R when you say it, so that way it's even more pronunciated. It's Rosser. Salvador Rosser. You just gotta roll your R's a little bit more. The hills have thighs. Darcy turned it down. All right. Next segment break, 40 minutes into Chopping Mall. Salvador Ross.
Okay, Kelly. I don't want to offend you because I know you love this movie, but those laser beams coming out of the robots, pastel color
They were so
laser beams,
expensive too.
pink lasers.
It was the 80s. Come on. They were so expensive too. And they didn't get as many as they wanted. And they were afraid they weren't going to get any lasers at all.
Aren't they really, really bad shots, the
They're super
robots?
bad shots.
I mean, they've got computers. They should be able to zero in on your forehead and just laser your brain on the first try. Takes about 9,000 tries before they explode
Isn't
Susie's
that
head.
every movie though?
But that was a fine exploding head. But
Yes,
I
it
don't
was.
think it was. Wynorski says it was the second greatest exploding head in history. He said Scanners was number one,
Mhm.
and then this was number two. What about Tom Savini exploding his own head in Maniac?
Yeah.
I think we need to get some exploding head perspective here.
You got him. Yeah, you got him there.
Yeah.
You need an exploding head expert.
All right. I know I'm hitting you with a lot of stuff all at
That's
once.
all right.
All right.
I can take it.
Now I know that you love the robots because I've heard you talk about them before.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me your theory, because I had never thought of this myself,
Oh.
of the three personalities of the three robots.
So the first one then is Joe Friday, just the facts man. He's the one that gets Dick Miller. Just the facts.
The one on the first floor.
The first floor.
Yeah.
One on the second floor, if you watch, it's a ditz. It hides. I mean, it's like goofy. And
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like wacky. But the third one is Clint Eastwood. That's Dirty Harry.
Really? So the last robot and the one on the third level.
Dirty
He,
Harry.
he actually uses the elevator, right? Or the escalator.
He's the one that almost gets me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are the three personalities. A lot of the people who comment on this movie, as they say it's unrealistic, like they go, really, kill robots in a mall. You know, a lot of them say, yeah, right, sure, they sell guns in a mall. You know, but I don't think that was so weird because all you'd need is a Walmart or a Bass Pro Shop. And I know Bass Pro Shop is usually separated from the malls. You know, it's out on the edge of the parking lot. But I got to think they were occasionally inside the mall or a Cabela's. Cabela's has stuffed endangered species inside the store. So talk about a hunter's paradise.
I gotta be honest with you, chat. I love myself some Cabela's. They sell all your camping gear, all your hunting gear. Cabela's is like my fucking Toys R Us. Cabela's is like my Home Depot, right? It's fucking perfect if you love camping, if you love the outdoors, if you love hunting. I could spend hours being in a Cabela's, and if I had enough money, I could definitely find some shit to buy. But Cabela's is a very nice store if you love camping and just outdoors and hunting stuff, fishing, all that type of stuff.
But Pro Shop by Cabela's, because that was, I think it's the same store now, which means massive firepower in the mall. But yes, you could totally arm yourself for a battle to the death without a controlled security robots in a mall by going into a Bass Pro Shop, much less going into Peckinpah's Sporting Goods, which is what they, an obvious homage to the great Sam Peckinpah, who invented the blood squib, I think, or at least perfected the blood squib. Anyhow.
I had a blood script.
Yeah?
Yeah. So there's a mall right here, not far away, where they have an ammo store in the mall. Not the, everything but the guns.
Really?
Awesome.
You stopped in the ammo store on your way over?
No, I was told. And somebody said,
We have an ammo store, no gun.
Person, but I wanted to send you pictures because there's a furniture store in that mall too. That's another thing that we get ripped on all the time.
Yeah, well, while you're in
Furniture store.
town, go to the Western wear stores because they have concealed carry vests, which they have a whole section of concealed carry in the Western wear stores.
I'm
So,
good with my
you-
my flare.
oh, okay, you already got that covered. All right. All right, Kelly, stay with us for one more break. I need you to give us some behind-the-scenes gossip
Absolutely.
on the Chopping Mall set after hours, which would be daytime. because
That's
you had
right.
to shoot all night long, right, when the mall stores were closed, right?
And be out of there for them to open.
Yeah. Did you and Ferdy have any off-screen thing going on?
No, but Jim Wynorski thought we did.
He did?
Yeah.
He was suspicious of you hanging out too much with Ferdy?
I thought about
Now, this was obviously made way before Zack Snyder's, I believe it was Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead, one of those two. Sometimes I get my zombie movies mixed up, Chad. I'm not a very big zombie movie fan. To me, they're like the paranormal shit with all the ghosts and whatnot. But this was obviously made way before Zack Snyder did his take on Night of the Living Dead, which is basically Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, whichever one of those two, where they're in the shopping mall and they take refuge in there to get away from all the zombies. I wonder if Zack Snyder was not only inspired by Night of the Living Dead, but also this movie here. I wonder if he was ever inspired by Chopping Mall, because it's kind of lining up with a lot of the similarities between the two movies, if you ask me. I actually am a fan of Zack Snyder, what he did, but as I was saying, I just wonder if Zack Snyder ever got a little bit of inspiration from this movie here, Chopping Mall. If you ask me, there's similarities between the two for sure.
this later, and Tony was like, "Why is he like not that nice to me?" Yeah, but Tony and I we're still friends.
Tony O'Dell as Ferdy.
Mm-hmm.
He became a well-known acting teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a dialogue coach.
Yes, he did.
In LA.
He's still an actor too, and he doesn't look hardly any different.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks amazing.
At the time this movie was made, he was mostly known as Jimmy in the Karate Kid.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He wasn't saved by the good kisser.
I think so. There's so many. I mean, who can remember? Kissers, I bet.
All right.
More stuff. Yes, I believe he was.
Okay.
He sold me.
Back to the flick. Good-looking cast in this movie. This is the old teenagers go into a dangerous place, get cut off from civilization, and die one by killer. There's just these little demonic R2-D2s, and if you have sex, you die. So they're robots that don't like teenagers having sex. Although you aren't really teenagers. Are you teenagers? Are you supposed to be teenagers in this movie?
We don't say. I mean, one couple is married.
Yeah. Could
I
be
guess
a
they're
teen
supposed
marriage,
to be
though.
older, yeah.
Whatever happened to Susie Slater?
I think that she lives someplace in the Midwest.
Well, she was from Kansas
Okay,
girl. She was actually a cheerleader at the University of Nebraska. She was a flight attendant, swimsuit model, 3 Playboy pictorials. I probably wrote girl copy for Susie Slater when I worked for Playboy. But she did a lot of bombshell walk-on roles, and then vanished. So
I'm not privy to what happened, but I know that she did the whole Marilyn Monroe thing all the time.
if you can be hot after having your head exploded, you're hot.
It's one of those movies where the actors are young enough to play teenagers, but the age is actually never mentioned in the movie itself. Next segment break, 48 minutes.
Wow. Barbara Crampton burns up real good. Who was in that fire suit? Do you know?
Probably either Paul or Anthony, Tony.
Yeah, I've never. That was a long burn. In fact, the burn was so long that the MPAA threatened New Horizons with an NC. People must have been saying, "Jim, cut."
He's going to say enough on his own, but as long as he's willing
Well,
to do
no,
that.
the guys have to come out with fire extinguishers and put him out.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
He's just fucking watching the guy burn. Oh my god! And I don't even know if the guy was wearing like a proper fire suit and shit. They didn't even have fucking enough budget to get correct lasers for the robots. Holy shit! Fucking cut. And Jim's just sitting there, keep rolling, keep rolling. The guy's fucking burning to a crisp. Oh shit! Salvador Ross was feeling spicy, Chad. Salvador Ross wanted it spicy for the burn to a fucking crisp scene. Holy shit.
I cut.
Yes, they did.
So anyway, Barbara is falling apart.
Mhm.
First cycle.
Probably got him like a fucking $20 flame retardant suit, and he just wanted to test it to its maximum abilities. Like he's gonna reuse the shit in another movie.
Logically now literally falling apart, but you're showing them how to make giant Molotov cocktails
Mhm.
and sticking road flares down your bra.
That's right.
Was that your idea to stick the road flare in
I
your
wish
bra?
it was. I wish it was, but it wasn't.
Okay. You added that "Dad's a Marine" line though, right?
No,
No?
no. Wynorski said I want to do a callback to Night of the Comet.
Oh, so he was a fan of Night of the Comet. So 'cause that's a reprise.
That's how I got into Reed for that. He said I want to use somebody like that girl in Night of the Comet,
Okay.
and so I went in and met for it. I almost didn't get that part,
Okay.
but
And so
I did
that
get
was but that is, I mean, people who had seen Night of the Comet would
that's one of their
instantly
favorite things. I
refer to that.
because I
Yeah.
said, you really want me to do that?
References to other
I
movies.
know.
So
Right.
something people probably don't know about you is that you first studied acting at the famous Guthrie Theater
That's right.
in Minneapolis, which is where you're from, right?
Hmm.
So I did my show in Minneapolis last year, and everybody said to me before I went there, they said, we have to warn you about many Minneapolis audiences, or Minnesota in general, Joe Bob, because they're very polite.
Hmm.
They're not wild people.
Minnesota.
They may
does.
love your show, but you'll get polite applause. And then they were all yelling, "Fuck yes, woohoo!"
Were
They
they
were just going crazy. They were great. So
Oh,
is
good.
that true
Came
about?
through.
Is that true about Minnesotans?
There's a saying called Minnesota nice.
Yeah.
It's so close to Canada. It's a lot like Canada nice.
Okay.
But oh no, I'm so glad they came through for
No,
you.
they
Yeah.
decided to go crazy that
Good.
night.
Good.
And then you studied at the National Shakespeare
That's
Company
right.
Conservatory in New York. Very highbrow type of acting training.
Yeah.
Did you do a lot of Shakespeare?
Well, I was in school and I got this.
So you never got to do you never got to do Juliet or anything?
No, I never got to do anything like that.
Okay.
I went there. I was afraid to tell them. I said I got a soap opera, and the guy said I thought he was going to say oh and stick his nose up in there, and he said that's the whole point is to get work.
Oh,
And I
okay.
went this whole time because I was going to spend years and
Doing
and he
classical
cut to the
training.
chase and he said, that's the point is to get work. Why didn't you tell me that at the beginning?
And then you became the evil Lolita
Mhm.
on Ryan's
Oh, that
Hope.
was so fun. 300
episodes.
That was so
That's a lot of
fun.
episodes. So, did any of that Shakespeare training come in handy on Ryan's Hope?
Yes.
Yeah?
Training is training, but I'll tell you what, it clips being on the soap every day and having to put that out every day was far better than any school I could have gone to. Because
Really?
then you got out to Los Angeles and they're doing these movies they're not that low budget, but for that time they were really low budget. And it was like,
Yeah.
do one and one for safety and you got to go. But those of us like Barbara and myself who had done soaps knew how to do that.
I don't even know how you remember the lines. Don't you get the script the night before or something? And you
Or a
have to,
couple
like,
days before.
couple of days before, and
Mhm.
but you have like 100 lines
The
when you
line
get in there, right?
is a muscle. And
Yeah.
if you memorize all the time, you can do it all the time.
I just don't know how you do that. All right,
But you can get out of shape too.
really.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you one more thing, but only because you brought it up. And you brought this up, okay? Camel toe.
It's the worst camel toe in the history of film.
Yeah.
I know you're going to agree with me.
In this movie.
Look at it.
The movie we're watching now.
And okay, nobody, I did the whole movie and nobody mentioned to me that I had a severe camel toe.
So you did the whole movie. Nobody comes up to you and says, hey,
No, they just all let it be. So
We
now
know
I'm trying.
Well, no shit, they let it be. Fucking Wernerski, however the fuck they pronounce his name, wanted to fucking date her. He's probably fucking, getting turned on by the fucking scenes and shit. But fucking Jesus, man. Nobody is even gonna mention that she's got the severe camel toe going on. And don't get me wrong, Chad. I mean, she's a very gorgeous actress, but at the same time, I mean, I've even talked about it earlier in this video alone, just how unfortunate it was to hear stories of her first actually getting this part of the movie because the director had a thing for her. But yeah, I definitely don't see him bringing up at any point, hey, we're probably gonna work on scenes where we gotta cut some stuff out. Oh, what do you mean cut some stuff out? Well, there's just something below the body that we kind of wild up from the scenes involving her and shit. So like I said, it's very unfortunate to hear the stories of like what happened early on in her career. But like I said, it seems like now, at least they can all sit around and laugh about it a little bit. And like I said, she found out that the director was kind of like spreading rumors about sleeping with his actresses and whatnot, and she definitely shut that shut. She definitely shut that shit down real fucking quick when they were gonna make the documentary on Werniewski. I like calling him Salvador Ross. I don't know. I don't know. But I don't think that Salvador at any point is going to turn down the camel toe scenes. I'm sorry, chap, but I think he's actually all for the camel toe scenes.
We know Wynorski's not going to tell you.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, Joe Bob just admits it himself. He's like, Wynorski isn't going to fucking bring it up at any point. Like, he's probably getting some kind of enjoyment out of it, to be honest. But, I mean, the guy let somebody fucking burn to a crisp for like 10, 12 minutes on camera. So, God forbid he lets the actress that he's trying to fucking bang let her know, hey, we just got to work on some of the below the neck region, and we're gonna try to clean up the. What do you mean clean up the appearance? Well, you're kind of showing a little bit too much for what we're trying to go for. No, of course he's gonna put that shit in the movie and include it.
But nobody else?
But Barbara betrayed you too. and Carrie Emerson was there. What's the story on Carrie Emerson, who plays Linda, the car mechanic? Where did she come from?
You mean the most gorgeous girl ever there? She is, she's married and she came to one of the Chopping Mall reunion type things. I guess she just did acting all that much.
No, she stopped acting shortly after this movie was made, and she was a last minute replacement for Deborah Blee, and actually you were a last minute replacement for Dana Kimmel. What was the story on Dana? Why didn't she want to do it?
She didn't want to swear.
She didn't want to swear,
Yeah.
and I think she didn't want to get naked either, right?
Well, I didn't get naked in it.
That's true, but they thought you were going to get naked. They thought that character might get naked.
Oh, they did? This is
They
before
did.
my time.
All these stories come from Wynorski, so we don't know.
Well,
All these stories come from Wynorski, so nobody really has 100% guarantee on what's actually rumor, what's actually fact, what's a lie. It's all. But they were fucking hoping that Kelly at some point was gonna have a sex scene. Probably the director more so than anybody else. But fucking he may have actually even at some point thought about writing it into the script. Like I said, it's all fucking rumors at this point. But who the fuck really knows what was going through his mind?
But
say no more.
all right. So Kelly, it's been great having
He's
you.
never going to speak to me again.
He's never going to speak to me again either. It's like we keep making fun of him. All right. Anyway, come back anytime.
I would love to.
At least two of the robots are still going strong here. So let's get back to Chopping Mall. And by the way, since we're talking about this,
he didn't write the sex scene. He didn't have Kelly do a sex scene because he personally wanted to do the sex scene, if you know what I mean, chat. He wasn't about to let anybody else get that type of satisfaction. He said, you know what, it's my movie. I'm the one who brought her on the set. I'm the one who casted her in this role. The actor has to step foot in the fucking $20 flame retardant suit and try to burn himself to a fucking, oh my god, just he's trying to like put ants under a magnifying glass for like 10-20 minutes in that scene. Like, holy shit, who would have thought we'd be digging deep into the facts of Chopping Mall tonight?
I have looked at the toe of a camel, like a real camel.
Yeah.
There's no resemblance. Who invented that?
I think there is.
Who was going, look at that camel's toe?
I think there is.
Look at that girl over there.
I think it looks exactly like a camel.
You do?
I do.
Okay.
In fact, the
You
first time
haven't
I
been
heard
to the
that,
zoo
I went,
lately.
bingo.
That's not what a camel's toe looks like.
What?
We got Chris Jericho still coming up, ladies and gentlemen. Fozzy. Next segment break, 59 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, Ghosts and Goblins, Witches and Wizards, Vampires and Werewolves. Thank you so much for being with me again tonight. This is Season 7, Episodes 1 and 2 of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob. This is the movie Chopping Mall. It should be coming to a conclusion after maybe one or two more segment breaks. But thank you very much again for joining me here tonight. After this, it will be the next movie, Blood-Sucking Freaks.
The guy who falls 3 stories to his death in the mall atrium.
I'm kind of curious now. I'm kind of curious now after everything that we just talked about with Kelly and Joe Bob. I'm kind of curious about what Chris Jericho has his opinion with this. You know what I mean? Like, is he a fan? Is he not a fan? What does he like about it? What doesn't he like about it?
Greg, that actor is Nick Siegel, nephew of George Siegel, and his entire career consists of 3 movies. The immortal Breakin' 2 is Electric Boogaloo, the immortal School Spirit, and of course his crowning achievement as the crazed boyfriend of Barbara Crampton in Chopping Mall. Nick is in real estate now. All right, before we get to the astounding conclusion of the greatest mall-oriented killer robot flick ever made, I wanted to mention a few more things. Many people soundtrack for this movie. That's Chuck Serino. He would compose dozens of film soundtracks, but I believe this was his first soundtrack. At the time he was hired, he was working for Shadow Stevens, the famous radio host and UFO expert. But this was back in the 80s when Shadow was mostly known for being the pitch man for Federated department stores. So Serino's idea for the music was, what would a robot be thinking? And so the music was a constant flow of robot brain instructions, which is why it sounds so intense and bombastic. Although there's Allison's theme, which I mentioned before, that's harp and piano.
That makes me think of the SpongeBob episode where they think Mr. Krabs is a fucking robot because he's like so addicted to that one song. Beep boop boop beep. Like Squidward and SpongeBob start thinking he's a fucking robot. SpongeBob, you gotta ask him a question first. Oh yeah, like they fucking they put salt and shit in his eyes. Like they just start torturing Mr. Krabs because they don't believe he's actually really Mr. Krabs and he's just like become this brainless, lifeless soul. Beep boop boop beep. And the fucking song just keeps playing over and over.
There's a robot theme, though, which you hear over and over again, and that one sounds to me like a xylophone or a marimba, which you would normally associate with children's animation. So they're kind of happy killer robots. Chuck Serino still works with Wynorski today. They collaborated on the avant-garde festival film Cobra Gator. Jim Wynorski, he is a New Yorker, and his first job was shooting commercials for the Jumbotron at the New York Mets games. He always wanted to go to L.A. and direct real movies, but when he went out there, he couldn't get hired until he landed a job on a TV series called Breaking Away in 1979, and it was shot on location in Athens, Georgia. Well, once he got there, he got fired. But on the plane ride back to L.A., he sat next to a producer named Marcy Gross, and she introduced him to Roger Corman. And he was in such awe of Roger Corman that he told Corman he would do anything to work there. And of course, that's exactly what Roger likes to hear. So pretty soon he was cutting trailers, and then he was doing PR work. And finally, a half day, he'd seen Attack of the Crab Monsters at least 100 times before he went to work there. What else? Wynorski himself does the voice of the Killbots. Have a nice day, you know. And what other actors? Russell Todd plays Rick. He had become semi-famous in Where the Boys Are, 1984 version. He was also in He Knows You're Alone and Friday the 13th Part 2. And then John Terlesky is the gum-chewing Mike. He worked in several other Wynorski films. Today he's mostly a director. A lot of solid credits as a director of TV series. All right, they just killed a Killbot, but only Ferdy and Allison remain. Time for the thrilling conclusion of Shopping mall. I like the part where Linda, Carrie Emerson, the brunette, where she tallies up all the damage they've done to the mall. And she bemoans how much that's going to cost them. Wouldn't it be the reverse? Wouldn't you be suing the mall from here to Cleveland for, terrorizing you with berserk robots? Just a question. Maybe people weren't so litigious back then. They must be good people. They own a mall. It's nobody's fault. How can anything bad happen here? It's a mall. Malls were happy places in the 80s, like Disney World, or like Disney World used to be before that alligator ate a toddler. How did that thing come out? If I was the head of Disney when that happened, I would have just sent 3 semis full of $100 bills over to that family the same day it happened. Can you imagine the meetings that they had in Burbank after that? This eaten by alligator situation has a potential for affecting the spring hotel bookings. Can you do a report on that for us, Jenny? What am I talking about? This is what happens when you spend too much time overanalyzing shopping malls.
I do just want to add very quickly, since the movie is about to end here, I do just want to add to Chopping Mall, 2 of the worst movies I've ever seen that has anything to do with horror and robots is Megan. I absolutely hate the movie Megan. That little fucking robot bitch is a parasite amongst the horror genre. Do not like that movie at all. Fuck that cunt robot. Um, Megan absolutely sucks dick. Uh, I mean, just how many terrible things can I say about Meg? No, I mean, but honestly, like, it's such a stupid ass. I'm just not appealed by the idea of like a horror kind of like robot little girl going around like using all these like different, you know, robotic weapons to like kill people and shit. It really wasn't that great of a movie to me. Um, and then there's the Child's Play movie where Chucky is like an actual like robot instead of like the way we know Chucky is like a possessed doll. The robot Chucky, I don't know if it's just called Chucky or fucking Child's Play or something like that, but it's definitely like the remake of Child's Play. It's not like the more recent ones like Cult of Chucky and yeah, it's just it wasn't directed by Don Mancini either. I think Universal just kind of wanted to do like a spin-off and see where they could like take the franchise. But that was definitely one of the worser Child's Play Chucky movies I've ever seen. The one where he's not like the possessed doll that we all know, like Charles Lee Ray, more human the longer that he's inside of the doll. It's just a fucking Child's Play robot that, becomes delirious and just ends up going on a killing spree. And that movie definitely sucked. But I also believe that Don Mancini had no involvement with that. Actually, cool that Don Mancini is still working on Child's Play and Chucky stuff. That's pretty much his baby, that's kind of his go-to creation in a way. So everything that he's done with the Chucky films recently, like Cult of Chucky, and then they even have a series now. I think it's kind of great to see him still involved, and a lot of the actors. Brad Dourif's daughter is actually a really good actor too. I enjoy her a lot in the Chucky series as well. So it's really cool that Don Mancini has incorporated all those things now in his movies, and he's really just got a go-to series with the Chucky stuff and Child's Play. But yeah, that fucking spin-off remake was just terrible, where they tried to make Chucky more of like a killer robot in a way. But Megan and the Child's Play spin-off remake was just fucking terrible. Like I said, I don't know. I can't remember at the time being if they called it Child's Play, if it was like a remake or just like Chucky. But I definitely remember it being one of those 2 titles. So, fuck Megan and fuck the Child's Play spin-off remake. Chucky, whatever the fuck it was, Child's Play. but those are two of the worser ones that I've definitely seen. Okay, we're finally at the conclusion here for Chopping Mall. This is after the end credits. Let's hear what Chris Jericho, Fozzy, has to say. Is he actually going to be in this episode? Because now it's a little bit more towards the end. Usually they'll have the guests come out like during the episode and talk a little bit more. He might be in the next one. But there's still a chance that Chris Jericho, Fozzy, is going to be in the episode here for Chopping Mall.
And so the intrepid Kelly Maroney, our friend now, hides behind a bag of dog food, bites her lip while tarantulas and snakes crawl across her body, but is frightened by some kind of rubber lizard. The third jump scare in about 5 minutes, by the way. How about that jump scare that was just trash falling out of the closet? But her scream alerts the killbot, leading to the epic confrontation in the paint store where she remembers the road flare that she had cleverly hidden in her bra in an earlier scene, one of the few final girl conclusions in which she is reunited with her apparently dead boyfriend, who thankfully was able to staunch his massive head wound with a roll of toilet paper. Who could not love Chopping Mall? Released under the title Killbots. Now, it was an hour and a half long when it was first released, and it did not do well during a limited test run. So Roger Corman took it into the editing room, said, we're going to shorten it and make it better. And while doing that, somebody came into the room to change the light bulbs, and he said, why don't you just call it Chopping Mall? And nobody even remembers who that was who said that, some random employee at New Horizons Pictures. So Roger liked the name. The new ad campaign was born, and history was made. So the title makes no sense. There is no chopping in the movie. Chopping implies knife wounds, or axe wounds. And what we have is lasers. But one of the best films in the sub-genre called mall horror, which would include Dawn of the Dead, Phantom of the Mall.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. It was Dawn of the Dead. Zack Snyder's tribute to Night of the Living Dead, of course. I had mentioned it earlier, even on this episode here, but I guess it was an inspiration for that. It's like this little niche sub genre in the horror field where you have horror movies centered around a shopping mall. This, of course, is Chopping Mall, but it was apparently an inspiration for that in some way. Like I said, it had some similarities too when we started talking about it. But I could definitely see where Zack Snyder may have watched it and just try to get away from all these hordes of zombies. I could definitely see Zack Snyder saying that shit.
The Initiation. What else takes place in the mall? Night of the Comet has a big mall sequence. If you include supermarkets, you could say Intruder, The Mist. We should have mall horror things about this movie. Roger Corman did end up cutting out 15 minutes of the original print, horrifying Jim Wynorski at the time, but the result, 77 minutes. Yes, perfect length for this movie. And why can't they do that anymore? Why does every horror movie today have to be 110 minutes? Not that this is even necessarily a classic horror movie. It's more like an action thriller with some horror elements in it. The second thing is, why do special effects have to cost umpteen jillion dollars? Robert Short made those robots out of wheelchair frames and pieces of conveyor belt, and they look amazing, right? Operated on 12-volt car batteries. They used the electric wheelchair motors, fiberglass over an aluminum shell, and of course they had to overcrank the film a little bit to make them look fast because they could only travel 8 miles an hour. The arms and hands of the robots were grabber claw toys from Japan, and the bodies were supported by roller skate wheels. And speaking of speed, though, does this movie move or what? It's one of the most efficient stories ever told. So, Darcy, come on out. Darcy the mail girl, ladies and gentlemen.
Darcy, ladies and gentlemen.
Darcy the mail girl.
The lovely mail girl, Darcy.
You know anything about Chopping Mall? You look great, buddy. You look exactly like
twins, right?
Yeah, Kelly Maroney's, So, you're a fan of Chopping Mall.
Heck
Okay?
yeah, I love this movie.
Yeah, well, and by the way, you've been tearing it up in the off season. thank you for all the
My
stuff you
pleasure.
did in the off season. How many AEW wrestling matches did you go to?
Like, not nearly enough.
Really?
Yeah.
Darcy, of course, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrestling fan. She is also a fan of All Elite Wrestling. It's also a little bit interesting. I was just talking earlier on this episode how I kind of prefer AEW over WWE right now in terms of like the writing and the storylines. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, Darcy the Mail Girl is a wrestling fan. She's probably responsible for getting Chris Jericho involved with the upcoming segments that we're gonna see here with Jericho and Joe Bob.
And at every one of those matches, you carried this Chris Jericho sign saying, Chris, you know.
Kind of begging.
It said, yeah, begging Chris to come on the last drive-in, and your persistence paid off because Jericho is in the house tonight. But
We got
before you take it very seriously, and the Silver Bolo goes. Since, you know, it's been a long time since we introduced the Silver Bolo. Review what the Silver Bolo represents.
We give it for excellence in horror media. People who deserve more attention than they're getting. It can be television, radio, internet, podcasting, blogging.
And the winner this week is
Count Gordeval.
really
Count
Hey,
Gord
That's
Duvall.
great. I love Count Gordeval. We just saw him. Scares the Care weekend. That charity.
With Sid Haig.
Oh, it was Sid Haig's last con. It was kind of sad. It was in Williamsburg. I mean, it's sad when we think back on it now. But Count Gordeval was there. He was in full makeup,
He was
being
adorable.
his usual charming self.
Rest in peace,
love
Sid
that.
Haig.
Yeah.
Count Gordeval started back in 1973, making him the earliest horror host that's still around.
Really.
Count
He's
Gord
older than
Duvall
me. See, I like him. You
wins
know.
the Silver Bolo
Well,
award
look
here.
at him. He's been around longer than Svengoolie.
Yeah, Svengoolie was like 1979, so yeah, like 6 years earlier.
Okay.
His real name is Dick Dizelle, and
Okay.
he invented the character as a supporting player on the Those Are the Clowns show, which is on Channel 20 in Washington, D.C. The original character was called M.T. Graves.
Empty Graves.
Yes,
M.T. Graves.
M.T. Graves.
Okay.
I like it.
Name on Gore Vidal, the novelist and author of Caligula, who was
Yeah.
a big deal in 1973.
And Creature Feature used to have Penthouse Pets as guests.
I'm in favor of Penthouse Pets as guests. Can we do that here? Because that would be fun.
And then he was the first horror host to have a weekly show on the internet, starting in 1998. He doesn't just do movies. He also does music, video games, monster model building, and he frequently appears at conventions. Now in his 46th year of doing the count and one of the best known celebrities in DC.
Okay. You know what we need? We need to have a horror host reunion here.
Yeah, we do. I would freaking love that.
Start stalking the horror host the way you stalked Chris Jericho, and we'll set that up, you know.
I'm all over it.
Okay. Yuki, we have a genuine silver. This is silver, right? Okay. One Silver Bolo on its way to Washington, D.C. And, you know, I got a whole lot of flack on the internet recently.
Oh my god. Don't go there.
Okay, I'm not going to go there. But you defended me, though. You were great.
I had to block like 40 people at least.
And I appreciate that you blocked all those people. Although
Hey, if you say so.
but one of the things that came out of that is that they thought that was outdone. All right, so this blonde is speeding down the road in a female police officer. So the blonde cop asked to see the blonde's driver's license. So she digs through her purse. She gets progressively more agitated because she can't find her driver's license. So finally she says, "What does it look like?" And the police officer says, "It's..." Finally finds a square mirror in her purse. She looks at it, hands it to the policewoman. So the blonde officer looks at the mirror, hands it back to the blonde driver and says, "Okay, you can go. I didn't realize you were a cop."
All right, chat. The next episode, episode 2, is going to be Joe Bob talking about the movie Blood-Sucking Freaks. As once again, everybody on YouTube, if you are watching this on YouTube, for all the technical difficulties tonight, hopefully everything is resolved when the final stream does appear and is uploaded to YouTube. But, like I said, we're about to take a 1.5, 2-minute break. I'm going to step out of the room very quickly and then be right back, because I do have night football game to watch tonight. The New York Jets are playing, baby. We got the Buffalo Bills to win yesterday. My Pittsburgh Steelers won yesterday as well. And now I'm hoping for the New York Jets tonight. So, trying to watch that Monday night football game at 8 o'clock. We'll be right back. All right. Let's get the AC going here. So this should be the episode where we finally get to hear from Fozzy, Chris Jericho himself, ladies and gentlemen, Le Champion in AEW. Wasn't there to talk about the movie Blood-Sucking Freaks for episode 2 on season 7 of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. Thank you once again, everybody, for joining me tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves. This is episode 2, season 7, The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob. This is the movie Blood-Sucking Freaks.
Alright, I'm Joe Bob Briggs, and I realize that some of you think we went a little bit lowbrow by opening the season with Chopping Mall, which is why we always do double features, so we can redeem ourselves in the nightcap with an intellectually powerful classic. We try to balance things out. And so our next movie is the one and only, the immortal, Blood-Sucking Freaks. Uncut, of course, including the scene in which a dwarf gets head from a head. We had to fight for that. But the real reason we're showing Blood-Sucking Freaks is that it's the favorite movie of our special guest, Chris Jericho, who may be the hottest wrestler in the world. We have some albino farm lovers in Manitoba, where Chris is from. Actually, he was also in Sharknado 3.
Chris Jericho was in Sharknado 3. More recently, he did have an end cameo in Terrifier 2, which was really impressive to me. I really enjoyed seeing him at. Chris Jericho has done a little bit of acting on the side. Maybe going to venture into it when the wrestling career is said and done. But he's still going in that wrestling ring, ladies and gentlemen. So until he decides to hang up the boots, Chris Jericho probably going to be making a few more cameo appearances in the horror movies. But I love seeing him do some contributions to Terrifier 2. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, Terrifier is one of my favorite horror series today. I love Damien Leone and the Terrifier movies. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing Terrifier 3. I plan on seeing Terrifier 3 on my birthday. It comes out, I believe, October 11th this year. And they also just announced the popcorn buckets.
How cool is that? But no, really, I'm not making this up. Chris is not only one of the world's top wrestlers, but he's perhaps the world's reigning expert on Blood-Sucking Freaks, the Joel Emery classic from 1976. Darcy, I see you're ready to go with the Jericho cosplay. You've been working on and I know what your cosplay means, you know, but I'll save that story. We'll let Jericho tell that. Darcy is here to field your tweets, your Facebook posts, your emails, your phone calls.
Darcy is cosplaying as one of the Jericho security guards from WCW.
What's your cell number, Darcy? Give us your cell number.
No.
Darcy the Mail Girl, always on duty at her Mail Girl station. And tonight we're continuing a tradition, by the way, of my combining horror and wrestling. It goes back to the 80s. A lot of you remember my series of interviews with Roddy Piper. God.
Horror and wrestling go hand in hand, ladies and gentlemen. Joe Bob even mentioning here, horror and wrestling have been together since the 80s. Joe Bob has even had some interviews with Roddy Piper, who it sounds like Joe Bob was actually a pretty big fan of.
Bless him, he was one of the true originals. And some of you in Dallas might recall the stuff I did with the Freebirds. Do you guys remember the Freebirds? You might remember those?
I definitely remember the Freebirds. But it is always cool to see Joe Bob kind of like involve some professional wrestlers here. Because you know me, I love my pro wrestling and I love my horror. So it kind of makes sense.
3 guys. Michael Hayes was the main one, the one with the hairband look. And then Buddy Roberts and Terry Gordy, also known as Bam Bam. I used to hang out with the Freebirds. They really liked the topless bars in Dallas. I mean, they really liked the topless bars. And that wasn't always a good idea because of Bam Bam. He loved alcohol and he loved to headbutt people. And you had to make sure Michael was there to keep him under control. Died early, bless his heart, Tennessee boy. Anyway, it was controversial to be friends with the Freebirds because they were the sworn enemies of the most sainted family in Dallas, the Von Erichs. Probably nobody remembers these promotions, but anyway, there's a long tradition of Joe Bob, wrestling, horror, and tequila shots at various bars full of guys with massive biceps. But Chris Jericho, who will join us at the first break, is a one-man wrestling promotion on his own. He was one of the most popular champions on WWF for 20 years, and then he's the most loved and hated guy on AEW. Blown away WCW this year. It's the first new wrestling league in decades to really make an impact. And actually, we were on TNT at the same time. He wrestled in the old WCW back when I was doing Monster Vision until the TNT management destroyed that wrestling franchise. They were not big fans of wrestling. They wanted to do the United Nations Song Fest and movies about the Civil War that nobody watched. Anyway, that's another story. I can't really tell it here, but if you see me at a convention or somewhere, ask me about that. I'll tell you that story. But TNT saw the error of their ways, and now they're doing AEW 2 nights a week and destroying. Is killing it in AEW. Plus, he's been the lead singer in a metal band called Fozzy for the last 2 decades. They recently opened for Iron Maiden. That's how awesome they are. Plus, he has one of the most popular podcasts in the country. That's how I met him. He asked me to be on his podcast last year. Plus, as if that wasn't enough, he still wrestles over in Japan. I always mess up. He's got a championship belt right now, meaning he wrestles every week somewhere in the U.S., so he flies constantly here, and then he flies over to Japan and back to do those shows. Plus, he does Fozzy tours where he flies for those, so he basically spends half his life on an airplane, which is something I wanted to talk about before we do the movie. Did you know that Qantas now has this flight that is the longest flight in aeronautical history, 20 hours. It goes between New York and Australia. Who would do that? I don't ever expect to be that desperate to get to Sydney. If I have to go to Australia, I'm more likely to fly to LA, stay a few days, continue to Maui, spend a few days watching whales, proceed to Fiji and Bora Bora to down some tropical cocktails in a grass hut, and then sort of glide into Sydney on a sunny morning just in time to meet with Rupert Murdoch or whoever before his afternoon nap, you know. You guys who are always writing to me from Australia saying, why don't we have Shutter here? Move closer to us, okay? But I have some experience with long-ass flights. I used to do those budget airlines in Europe where you have 4 plane changes on your way to your destination. Now, you know how you look up flights on Expedia or Kayak and it'll say, well, the ticket is only $30, but the itinerary is 67 hours. I would actually hit yes on those. You fly to places like Thessalonica, and you take shuttles a lot. You always have to go to the 7th terminal away from your terminal. You may not even know what country Thessalonica is in, but you're changing at Thessalonica. So, I'm not in Chris Jericho's as far as dealing with the long flights, but I do have some advice that always works. So, if you are considering taking that 20-hour flight, I'm going to tell you how to make that time vaporize, as though you were teleported through time and space in some kind of Barbarella love tube. First of all, whatever you do, do not, I repeat, do not turn on whatever multimedia screen is provided as part of your first class sleeping pod. You will start watching the movie 12 Years a Slave, even though you have no particular interest in 12 Years a Slave, because you see that 2-hour, 14-minute running time on it, you know? So you're thinking, you know, as soon as this is over, I'll be coasting over southern Mexico, only to find out that when it's over, you're coasting over Jackson, Tennessee. You're not even out of the U.S. yet. And then you'll put your noise-canceling headphones on that you paid $350 for at the airport electronics store, and you'll watch Only You, the romantic drama based around in vitro fertilization, because you figure, that's going to put me instantly to sleep. But it doesn't. It just annoys you. And so you follow that up by rewatching the remake of Child's Play, even though you're still pissed that they didn't use Brad Dourif to voice Chucky the Doll. And at the end of that, you're still 14 fucking hours away from Sydney.
We were just talking about the remake of Child's Play 2, how they fucking fucked everybody over, didn't even get Brad Dourif to do the voice of Chucky. It was a stupid robot-possessed Chucky doll. It wasn't even the actual Chucky that we know and love. It was a bad fucking movie, alright, chat?
Only now you have a headache from watching too many tracking shots, and you have a brain so scrambled that you're going to have nightmares about African Americans having test tube babies that look like homicidal dolls. So you're ruined for the next week. So,
but everything always seems to add up here. Everything always seems to come back full circle. We got wrestling, we got horror tonight. Chris Jericho's on the show here with Joe Bob. They're going to be talking about the movie Bloodsucking Freaks. Apparently, it's Chris' favorite horror movie.
Let me list some other things that you are not going to do on your delightful journey to the land down under. You are not going to pop melatonin. You are not going to get a fake prescription for Xanax.
Chris Jericho and Joe Bob were both simultaneously on TNT back in the 90s, before TNT decided to fuck them both over, including WCW, by just saying, hey, we don't want wrestling on our show anymore. And Joe Bob also had Monster Vision canceled. Of course, both of those were on TNT. WCW used to be on TNT. Now, wrestling is back on TNT. It's All Elite Wrestling. And like I said, I'm more Team AEW right now over WWE's product.
You are not going to buy those light-emitting doohickeys that claim to combat jet lag.
But All Elite Wrestling, in a way, AEW has kind of become like a modern WCW. Even just like the way that they kind of market their shows, like, you know, you have Dynamite, you have Rampage, you have Collision. A lot of those honestly remind me of Nitro and Thunder back in the day.
Unless Qantas has a fully equipped gym somewhere on the Boeing Dreamliner, stretch and lift every 3 hours, and I'm guessing they do not, what you're going to do is read a book. Okay? But not just any book. You're going to read one of the classics of world civilization, a long book, a difficult book, the book you told yourself you were going to read 27 years ago, but you never got around to it. And you're going to read it from beginning to end in a single flight. Okay? Before heading to JFK, load one of the following tomes into your Kindle. Any of them will work, but some work better than others. War and Peace. All right, this is the obvious cliche choice. The book used as a metaphor for density and length. Believed to be the longest novel ever written. It's not. Fairly good choice, though, for our purposes because of the war part, not the peace part. Okay, here's the important caveat. Get the crappy Constance Garnett translation. It's sort of Tolstoy for dummies. Do not accidentally download the acclaimed translation by Richard Pavere and Larissa Volokhonsky. That's full of nuance and complexity. All right, the reason for this will become obvious later. Next, remembrance of things past. This might actually be the longest novel ever written, and since everybody knows who Marcel Proust is, or at least everybody at trendy cocktail parties, and yet nobody has actually read all his inner monologue navel-dwelling drivel, you'll be able to amaze your friends the rest of your life with comments like, as Proust once said, happiness is beneficial for the body, but it is grief that develops the powers of the mind. Of course, you don't have to get the quote exactly right because you're the only guy who's ever actually read the whole novel. But best to choose a quote later than page 1250. Okay, Ulysses. I'm just kidding. I know you guys are not going to read Ulysses. Okay, Spencer's Fairy Queen. All right, admit it, you haven't opened this book since sophomore year when it was assigned as part of Survey of Elizabethan Literature. You didn't even get even halfway through book 2. So to break it up, turn to your travel partner and bore him or her with speculation about the proper pronunciation of names like Archimago, Chrysogeny, Guion, Saturain, as well as the scenes that George Lucas stole for Star Wars. Poor Fellow My Country. Never heard of that book? That's because it's Australian. 850,000 words. It's written by a guy named Xavier Herbert. It runs to just under 1,500 pages. It's full of stuff about Australian patriotism that you won't understand at all. But hey, your destination is impress the locals. Mission Earth by L. Ron Hubbard. It takes Scientologists years to finish this massive son of a bitch. By reading it on your way to Australia, you can hope to someday meet Leah Remini and maybe rescue a cult victim or something. Or meet Tom Cruise and have your brain enslaved. Winston Churchill's 4-volume History of the English-Speaking Peoples. You will be the first person in history to actually finish the book that's in every home library but is frequently mistaken for a leather-bound jewelry box. If that's too hard, try Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. At least it has sex and violence in it. Okay. Stephen King's The Stand. Now, make sure you get the 1990 version and not the original. But at only 800 pages, this is kind of for lightweights. It's actually a good story. When you get to the part about the state trooper named Joe Bob, turn to your travel partner and say, isn't that the character that Joe Bob Briggs played in the miniseries? And if you can't bring yourself to tackle any of these, just because you don't think your brain can soldier through the density, there's always The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Best 940 pages ever written, especially relevant just 1 year after the Notre Dame fire. Now, here's what will happen. Any of the above books, with the possible exceptions of the last 2, will put you into a deep slumber. Okay, have a little red wine as you read, and you're guaranteed 1-hour naps throughout your journey. Whenever you wake up, read another chapter, and before that chapter is over, you will once again descend into dreamland. The combination of needing to finish the book in one sitting, therefore gaining entry into the Guinness Book of World Records, while being trapped on the plane, will result in an altered zone. The wheels of Qantas hitting the tarmac at Kingsford Smith Airport. You have survived, and you have filled yourself with fascinating trivia that will last a lifetime. Congratulations. You have conquered time and space. Unfortunately, your butt will still hurt. And speaking of stuff that hurts, it's time for torture, mutilation, mad doctors, and non-stop death in this low-rent classic that played at drive-ins and grindhouses for more than a decade and will shortly be revealed to be the favorite movie of AEW wrestling champion Chris Jericho, starring Sheamus O'Brien, with sort of the B-movie version of Vincent Price playing Master Sardou, who amuses his audience at the theater of the macabre by having a dwarf named Ralphus take a woman's blouse off, strap her in a chair, and tighten an iron tourniquet around her head until blood drips down her face. When he sticks a naked girl's hand in a vise and hacks it off, Ralphus follows it up by ripping her eye out and eating it. Sardou gets PO'd when the New York Times shows up to review the show, so he orders Ralphus to kidnap the Times critic by shooting him with a blow dart at an art gallery after a bimbo pops open a raincoat and flashes her groceries. Sardou amuses himself by being bullwhipped by leather. Once in a while, he sends Ralphus down into a dungeon to feed some raw meat to the moaning naked pork chops in a cage. He keeps them there until he can ship them to the Middle East, where Arabs pay big bucks for off-Broadway actress meat. To impress the kidnapped Times critic, Sardou tells Ralphus to electrocute a bimbo by pouring 500 volts through her breast, and it doesn't work. So Sardou goes back to work, ordering Ralphus to blow dart a blonde ballerina named Natasha. He wants to brainwash her so she can kick the critic's brains out in the next show. Ralphus hides out in her locker in Lincoln Center, knocks out her lights, drags her back to the theater, puts chains around her neck, hangs her up by her wrists, and starts playing the cymbals until she agrees to dance on opening night, but the evil doctor is called to preserve her life until the show, and Sardou pays the bill by letting him do a little experimental brain surgery. First he pulls out all her teeth so she can't bite him, and then he power drills her head while humming Marriage of Figaro. And then once he gets in there pretty deep, he wiggles it around, sticks in a straw, and realizes the promise of the title, Bloodsucking Freaks.
Well, there you go. That's the whole movie right there, Jack.
To the naked women in the dungeon, leading to the amazing scene where they rip out his heart and rub it over their flesh while Sardou and Ralphus stay upstairs playing darts on a slave girl's buttocks. Yes, we've seen it before, but have we seen it with a naked blonde stretched on the rack, a guillotine demonstration with a girl holding the rope in her mouth, Ralphus making love to a head, Sardou and Ralphus using human fingers as backgammon chips, a ballerina who gets her feet cut off, and a pretty good fried eyeball scene? I think not. Let's look at the drive-in totals for this classic of Western civilization. 13 dead bodies, 76 breasts, finger removal, cannibalism, nipple electrocution, hand severing, eyeball eating, molar removal, brain drilling, severed head oil, sandwich, psychotic dwarf dancing, four heads roll, hands roll, legs roll, fingers roll, feet roll, blow dart foo, martial arts naked ballet foo, Driving Academy Award nominations for Joel Reed, the writer-director who put things in a movie that no one had thought of before and no one has thought of since, and most of the audience didn't want to think of even while they were watching it. 3.5 stars for originality and for going to the absolute limit of bad taste. Joe
3.5
says,
stars.
check it out.
Almost 4 stars.
Originally called The Incredible Torture Show, and the theaters that played it were instructed to make the first letter of each word in the title bigger and a different color on the marquee, so that The Incredible Torture Show on the marquee spelled out tits. They were very subtle in their marketing strategies in the 70s. That title didn't work though, so they changed it to The House of the Screaming Virgins, and that didn't work either. It wasn't until Lloyd Kaufman came along in the early 80s and acquired the film and renamed it Bloodsucking Freaks that it found the audience it deserved. People like us. And shame on us.
Alright, chat. First segment break here. Coming up. I just want to speed it up a little bit because, like I said, trying to catch that Monday Night Football game. Maybe not the best decision because I don't want to miss any of the intervals with Joe Bob either.
Watched apparently urinals while cutting off parts of naked women's bodies for the amusement of a sadist and his dwarf S&M buddy. I can't understand why feminist groups picketed this movie. Can you, Chris?
This is just a pure example of mid-70s depravity. And the best part is, one thing I love, the credits at the beginning, it says, and introducing Louis de Jesus as Ralphus.
That's
introducing!
Right.
And we never saw him again, ever.
My co-host for tonight is Chris Jericho, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Renaissance man, athlete, musician, journalist, aficionado of horror.
Got Chris Jericho,
especially
chat.
this movie, because you have a lot of explaining to do, Chris.
We got Fozzie as the co-host.
of all
Here
movies,
for blood-sucking freaks.
Well, this was actually my choice. So if people enjoy it, they can thank you. If they hate it, they can yell at you because it's your show, and you have the final say. But so when I was a kid, I grew up in Winnipeg in the '80s. So it was the perfect time for horror movies, B horror movies that we used to call them cheap ass horrors. And there was a place right by my house. It was a short stop, like a convenience store, and they had like a paperback rack with with video cassettes of bad horror movies. So every week, the Cheap Ass Club, me and 3 or 4 of my friends would go and choose one of these movies. And there was a few rules. It had to be rated R. There could be no carradines in it, because there's too many of those. And you couldn't have heard of anybody that was in the film either. So if you found one with those qualifications, then each guy would choose one, and then you would have to give your presentation as to why yours was the best. And then the group would decide which one to rent, and you would go home and watch it. And Bloodsucking Freaks was the one that I found the one time. And I won the presentation. And then we went and watched this horror movie with just some of the worst. It's hard to watch now.
It is hard to watch.
It's hard to watch. Just some of the most disgusting moments, and just the dismemberment, and the things coming up in this movie that you've never seen before. I guarantee it, no matter how many cheap ass horror movies you've seen.
And how did that go over at the club that night?
Huge.
Yeah. Up in Winnipeg, your dad was a pro hockey player, right?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Yeah, and how are you on the ice? I bet you know what you're doing.
Well, I can. If you grew up in Winnipeg, you can skate and you can play hockey, but not very good in the grand scheme of things, which is why I got into wrestling and rock and roll.
I do want to add to this, ladies and gentlemen. I myself learned how to play hockey at Cazenovia Ice Rink, also famous for Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane grew up here in South Buffalo, also where I'm from. When I did track and field, I got to run, and I won my medals actually at the Buffalo War Memorial, whereas it's the arena where the Buffalo Bills actually used to play. So that's where I raced at the championships. I won my medals at the very old Buffalo Bills Stadium before they ever even went to Ralph Wilson and Orchard Park. It's the Buffalo War Memorial. And I actually went to wrestling training school. I went to a school to learn wrestling. It was in Lackawanna called Grapplers Anonymous. And another student who was there at the time when I went there is Daniel Garcia, who right now is also on All Elite Wrestling while we speak. And Daniel Garcia is very phenomenal. When AEW did their first show here in Buffalo, Daniel Garcia was actually the main event, and he defeated Wheeler Yuta. So that was really cool to see that moment for Daniel Garcia as well.
But still, like I said, when you grew up in Canada, it was very cold, so obviously you play a lot of hockey, drink a lot of beer, and it was perfect to watch movies. So that's why kind of this whole culture existed in Nordic areas of Winnipeg.
What did your dad think when you chose wrestling over hockey?
He knew I wasn't very good at hockey.
No?
Yeah. I remember I used to play, and they'd be like, "You're Ted Irvin's son?" And I'd be like, I'm trying. But yeah, he knew early on that wasn't my thing. I was much more of a creative type of a guy rather than a pure team-oriented athlete.
Okay. Well, as far as the movie goes, let's talk about Seamus O'Brien,
Yes.
who plays Sardu. This movie was cursed. And if any movie should be cursed, it's probably this one, because several of the actors died violent deaths, including Seamus O'Brien. The movie came out in 1976. In 1977, he was killed by a burglar who broke into his New York apartment. He made the mistake of trying to engage the burglar, and he was trying to hold him until the police got there. He was only 44 years old when he died. He could play much older. In fact, I think he looks older in the movie.
He was 60 in this, yeah.
Yeah, but he was in The Fantastics. And of course, most New York actors were in The Fantastics at one time or another. It was the longest running musical in history at the Sullivan Street Playhouse. But Seamus O'Brien played both the father character, Huckabee, and the old actor character, Henry, which means he must have been a pretty good singer. You wouldn't know that, but he, you didn't get hired for that show unless you could sing that song, Try to Remember, and, the other songs. So Huckabee has 4 or 5 songs in it. And he also worked at very highbrow, this doesn't make sense, but he worked at highbrow off-Broadway theaters like the Jean Cocteau Theater. That's, you need a graduate degree in French, to understand that stuff, and the Equity Library Theater. But here's what redeems his career, in my opinion. He was also in The Happy Hooker. He was a Brit, by the way. You know, that's not a fake accent, although it kind of sounds a little.
It sounds like the old school hall. Yeah. I never saw you.
But he was born in Stepney Green in the East End of London, the neighborhood where, for you guys who watch on Shudder UK, it's where the Genesis Cinema is. Nice little repertory art house place. So invite me to the Genesis Cinema. We'll do a tribute to Seamus O'Brien.
He deserves one. But let me say this, though. It doesn't surprise me that he did a lot of theater acting because as depraved and as sick as this movie is, the acting isn't bad. This is not like a bad B movie to where you see the boom mic in the shot and you're like, oh, this. Like, he really plays this part. So it doesn't surprise me that he was a theater trained actor.
Yeah. Well, they say at his wake, which is a traditional Irish wake, it was a really drunken party, and which is appropriate for Joel Reed, who we'll talk about as the movie goes on. Okay, anything to add, Chris, about Women in Cages? What's your stand on Women in Cages?
The thing about this movie, like I mentioned, it's very uncomfortable to watch, but the reason why it's not completely uncomfortable is that the women don't really care when things are happening to them. Like they'll get like the girl who's getting the vice cranked on her head.
Yeah.
She's not. If it's got like almost like it's tickling it in the armpit or something like that. So that kind of a little bit in more perspective to where you realize it's not as deep and crazy as it could have been.
How about Ralphus riding the woman like a cowboy?
I mean, Ralphus is one of my cinematic character heroes, and we'll talk more about that in the upcoming segments. But he does some of the worst things in this movie, and the worst thing of all is he looks. We call him a small size Oates. He looks like Oates from Hall & Oates, just a small size version. So small size Oates wearing his little overalls with that terrible, mustache. It's just it's a very surreal, bizarre character in this movie.
All right, thanks, Chris. Back to the movie. And by the way, the two guys in the opening, the guys who deliver the girl in a cage to the back door of Sardou's Theater, those were the body doubles for Telly Savalas and Gene Wilder. So the driver of the van was Telly Savalas, and the long-haired dude was Gene Wilder. So more information we don't really need to know, but since Chris Jericho is in the house, we're going to cover every...
Where did you come up with this shit?
I don't know.
Next segment break for Blood-Sucking Freaks. 30 minutes into the movie.
And so Ralphus tries to break Natasha's spirit with incessant cymbal clashes while her turtle panics because he knows she left for the theater already dressed in some kind of jester outfit from the Medieval Times dinner show. And by the way, that actor who plays the boyfriend, Niles McMaster, he was supposed to be a version of Joe Namath, the Jets quarterback who won the 1970 Super Bowl and was a major celebrity in New York City, still is a major celebrity. But Namath always wore a turtleneck and dated a lot of beautiful women, especially dancers. Hence, maybe people in 1976 would get that. Niles McMaster could actually act. But there's something about this movie that just destroys your acting ability.
Yeah.
But he was in the great gothic horror movie Alice, Sweet Alice as Brooke Shields' father, the same year this came out. And also the theater critic who's currently tied up in the basement being fed the flesh of dead strippers. That was Alan DeLay, and he was supposed to be a version of Clive Barnes, the New York Times theater critic, and I have no idea what was supposed to suggest that to people. Okay, Ralphus.
Yes.
My co-host tonight is Chris Jericho, musician, pop culture expert, podcaster, wrestling celebrity. Chris, you got to tell the Ralphus story.
So in 1998, when I saw this movie, I was in WCW, Ted Turner's wrestling company. And we were doing this thing kind of parodying Goldberg, who was really popular at the time. And Goldberg would come to the ring surrounded by Goldberg was coming. So I said, well, I'm going to do something weird looking guys. And there was a guy that I would always see in catering. He drove the lighting truck, the lighting trusses and stuff, like the semi around.
For WCW?
For WCW. And he had no teeth and just these two long incisors sticking out this way, almost like little spikes, like little Ralphus blow darts sticking right out this way. And he was bald, and he was super friendly. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. So I said, hey, if I ask you to come to the ring and be my security, will you do it? He said, sure, I'll do it. So I made this shirt. It was a white T-shirt. He's really fat, so I cut the bottom off, and I just wrote Jericho Personal Security on it. And he came to the ring with me, and I said, oh, your name is Ralphus. Because at the same time frame, I had just seen Blood-Sucking Freaks, and I was like, okay, Ralphus, that's the name. So for years, Ralphus got a little bit of notoriety. People always ask, where's Rufus? It's Ralphus. Ralphus, where'd you get that name? Blood-Sucking Freaks. So they always tied with this guy Ralphus from this movie with Louis DeJesus.
Okay, well, that story explains Darcy's cosplay. Darcy, come on out, or it partially explains it.
Darcy, ladies and gentlemen, the lovely male girl.
Jericho Personal Security.
Jericho Personal Security.
One of the Jericho Personal Security guards
The
tonight.
exact same shirt that Ralphus would wear when he appeared in the ring.
His was much filthier. He actually might have had bigger boobs than you too, with the size of his body. But yeah, Ralphus. And a couple of years ago, someone said, you should have Ralphus on Talk is Jericho, my podcast. You know where Ralphus is. And I actually got an email of him. I sent him an email, and he big leagued me. Never heard back from Ralphus. So Ralphus, if you're watching this, give me a call. Give a brother a call.
So, your combination of Ralphus and Natasha the ballerina.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's perfect.
Now you understand it.
All right. Did you see her sign when she? Which match did you go to? It was
I went to a
Illinois.
The first one was Champaign.
Champaign, Illinois. Okay. Yeah, and you held up a
Michael Myers
fast driving sign that said, "Thank you for the Michael Myers tweet," which is you wrote us that Michael Myers theory of what was it? Theory of
You asked for the theory. I think Michael Myers is evil.
Right.
I think he does what he does. And I knew they always would say, because he goes, he's the incarnate of evil. He's evil incarnate.
Now, I have a theory about Michael Myers, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, it has never been proved, especially with Halloween Ends recently. They fucking absolutely obliterated my fucking theory. But my theory is that Michael Myers' mask is made by the Silver Shamrock Corporation, the Silver Shamrock Company in the Halloween franchise. Of course, Silver Shamrock was big in Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. But my theory is that the mask that Michael like the same effect that Thor has when he picks up his hammer. Essentially what I'm saying is if somebody else is going to use Thor's hammer, it's going to be ineffective. But when Michael Myers puts that specific mask on, he becomes almost godlike. He becomes almost immortal, right? Nobody else is capable of wearing that mask and having those kind of superhuman abilities the same way that Michael Myers does. So that's just my theory. His mask is made by Silver Shamrock, and when Michael Myers is wearing that mask, he's like Thor with the hammer. Of course, more recently, in Halloween Ends, they kind of fucking destroyed that theory, but it's just my theory. I also like to believe that the Halloween movies are kind of more about the rivalry between Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Michael Myers. So for me, it's always kind of like Laurie Strode kind of has a purpose to kill and finally defeat Michael Myers, and then vice versa. Michael Myers kind of lives and has a purpose to kill Jamie Lee. He has the purpose to kill Laurie Strode. So, of course, like I said, in Halloween Ends, they defeated those theories. Halloween Ends absolutely sucks. I did not like that movie at all. Jamie Lee Curtis, you ain't getting away that easy. All right, we need another fucking Halloween movie and done appropriately. The first two were pretty good. I'll give them that. But Halloween Ends absolutely sucked.
Like, I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times. So I went outside the box and looked up a bunch of stuff. If you're really obsessed with your mother and you're really obsessed with your sister, and he saw his sister having sex, and as a result, he wanted to have sex with his sister, and that's what drove him crazy. And every woman he ever sees represents his sister, so he must murder them for not having sex with him, which is what he wanted when he was a little kid.
Okay, and we put that on the air.
We did.
That was a great theory.
Crazy.
Okay.
They did.
They loved it.
They actually liked my dissertation. I should have submitted that in college. I would have got a better grade.
Now, unfortunately, the original Ralphus is no longer with us. The 4'3", Luis de Jesus died of liver failure in 1988. He was only 36 years old. He was a big drinker. His last role was as an Ewok in Return of the Jedi. So let's have a moment of silence for Ralphus. Okay, that's enough.
A really sadistic, depraved Ewok.
Actually, he was hired straight out of the circus. He was doing Ringling Brothers Circus, and Joel Reed's first choice, everybody's first choice. When you need a dwarf in the 70s, Hervé Villechaize. And he talked to Hervé, and Hervé wanted to make a deal to do the movie. And his deal included hookers. Hervé wanted hookers. He wanted to be paid partly in hookers. And so Joel Reed liked that idea. And Joel Reed, I guess, had access to some hookers. And so, but Hervé Villechaize went to Paris right before they were filming.
He had some hookers.
And so Hervé Villechaize called and said he would still do the movie. You know, he would show up, but he needed an extra $400 to get back to New York, and he expected the film company to pay that. And right at that moment, Luis de Jesus walked into an audition, and this is a direct quote from Joel Reed. "What's the difference between one crippled dwarf and the next?" So, very sensitive guy, Joel Reed.
Well, could you tell from his script? Of course he's not very sensitive. You know, that was pre-Fantasy Island Hervé Villechaize too, so he probably needed the
Oh,
work.
was it? Okay.
The
All right.
postman with the golden gun. He's already been in a Bond movie.
Wow, okay.
There you go.
All right, back to the movie. Tell me if you agree with me, Chris and Darcy. Dwarves are a staple of horror, going back to Frankenstein, because didn't Frankenstein have a dwarf assistant?
He did.
And Igor, wasn't Igor a dwarf? I think he was a dwarf.
He could
I think
be.
he's just a hunchback.
Oh,
honestly.
okay.
Oh, those, yeah, okay.
Okay, now, Chris, you already know this. Luis de Jesus was well known as the star of an 8-minute stag loop back in the days when they made porn, 8 minutes at a time so they could show it at stag parties. And the stag loop is called the anal dwarf. Now, can we talk about this on Shudder, Austin? Can we talk about this? We can talk about anything, right? So it's a complicated porn name. It means very, very naughty, of course. But it's spelled Knotty because of her special skill. And she was a buxom girl from Nashville who worked at the Playboy Club in New York as a bunny. And also she was a stripper. And she was famous for her ability to tie her 4-inch labia together into a knot.
Wow.
So if you want to see her special skill, it's in the 1977 movie Jailbait.
I shall be looking
The
at
strange thing is her actual name was very naughty.
It
What
was.
chance she had to get in a porn with a name like that?
She also died of liver failure around the same time
Jeez.
as Luis. So anyway,
This movie was cursed.
the anal dwarf is Luis de Jesus penetrating, very naughty. And the interesting thing about it, and what made the stag loop famous, is that everything Luis lacked in height, he made up for in length and girth. So it wasn't that he was just a dwarf. Okay, that's enough of that. But years before he became famous for Ralphus, he was famous for being very naughty with very naughty.
I've learned more about Luis de Jesus today than I have in the last 20 years. Thank you, Joe Bob Briggs.
That's what we're all about.
All right, next segment break. It is at 43 minutes for Blood-Sucking Freaks.
Okay, 40 minutes into the movie, we finally see the blood-sucking freak, and it's the MD. That's Ernie Pisher as the doctor. Yes, I think that's his real name. Obviously a good singer.
Oh,
He's
amazing.
been on My Fair Lady in Broadway. He just made that up on the set. He started singing Largo from The Marriage of Figaro. And the woman he was operating on is Lynette Sheldon, who would be well known to quite a few actors in New York because she runs a well-established acting studio. She's a theater director, and she does master's classes in the old Stella Adler system in New York and Sydney. She's Australian. She takes that 20-hour flight all the time. But you know what's strange about Lynette? On her acting resume, she lists Tootsie, she lists Dog Day Afternoon, she lists quite a few other shows. She does not list Blood-Sucking Freaks on her resume. Even though all the blood-sucking was the sucking of her blood.
Yeah.
So she actually has half of the title role. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Chris Jericho. Chris, What do you think of that whole crazy doctor sequence, which
Okay.
is so bad it even nauseates Sardu and Ralphus?
First of all, the fact that most of these actors are New York thespians from the play scene blows my mind. It's like you've just done the Barber of Seville and you've done Macbeth. Do you want to do this script? I'm in. So, because it's the first time I ever put together the fact that that's the blood-sucking freak of the movies, the doctor. That scene, watching it back, still bothers me to this day. It's very uncomfortable to watch when he just drills straight down her head and then gets one of those long straws. Not a little one, it's one of the long straws. And he sucks and you can see the stuff coming out of his head. That's one of those ones where you're like, oh, whoa. Sardu and Ralphus then get mad at the doctor because he's too crazy for them. So he throws him into the jail cell where the girls just rip him apart like zombies in Dawn of the Dead. And you've got the one naked chick rubbing his heart all over her naked breast. Like, who's writing this stuff and who's doing it willingly? I almost think Joel M. Reed was a real-life Sardu who brought these actors in and made them do his evil bidding.
It kind of was. What did you think of Ernie Pisher singing while he was doing that?
I mean, he plays a great character. Once again, like we said, the casting in this is really good for such a horribly crafted movie. I thought he did a great job. He really, at first, because he gives her some soup, Natasha's soup, he puts the cover over her in jail, and then he just loses his freaking mind by doing the worst depravity in the movie of just sucking the brains literally out of somebody's head with a straw. And once again, going back to the theory that I said earlier, jerked out by pliers doesn't hurt all that much because she's going.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, she's obviously very tough, so it doesn't make me feel as bad for her.
All right. Well, I asked you about the singing because you're a singer.
I am a singer.
And I dig the Fozzy music.
Thank you.
And I went through your whole repertoire one afternoon on YouTube, I think, and that is some seriously hardcore dark stuff. Some of the stuff you sing is very dark.
Yeah.
And do you write the
Some of them, but our producer Johnny writes a lot of them, and he's way darker than I am, and people like dark lyrics, so we've just gone with the Johnny Andrews. And I say, what happened in Johnny's life to provide some of these lyrics? And then I have to try and incorporate them into my mind and sing them, because singing is emoting. You have to play the part of the person talking about these words. So, but it's worked out well. We just had our third top 10 hit. Nowhere to Run is the name of the song, so it's been great. Whatever works, right?
Yeah. What does the word Fozzy mean?
We started out.
Fozzy is a tribute band to Ozzy Osbourne. Because Chris Jericho loves Ozzy so much, he decided to name his band Fozzy.
It's a cover band, and the name of the band was Fozzy Osbourne. It was just a hobby. And then we got a record deal because of who was in the band, myself and a couple guys from a band called Stuck Mojo that was really popular at the time. And we said, we can't call ourselves Fozzy Osbourne because Sharon will track us down and sue us. So we just said Fozzy, not realizing that would be our name 20 years later. And I will say this, in a world of Def Leppard and Metallica and Kiss and the Beatles and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Fozzy is not that strange of a name. But unlike those other ones, it is the easiest name to chant at a show. Fozzy, Fozzy.
Oh, yeah.
So our strange name has now become like a war cry for all of our fans, and everybody can chant it at all times.
Well, not only that, they know all the lyrics to Judas, and they sing them in the arenas,
They
right?
do. Now in AEW, it's become a thing where people sing the lyrics when I come to the ring, which is great too. So.
Okay, and you opened for Iron Maiden.
We did
recently.
open for Iron Maiden, which was amazing.
Okay.
Blew my mind.
Well, normally when we have a real singer around, we do a horror-related song. John Brennan, do you have anything? John Brennan is our resident production coordinator and impromptu music department. He's written over 700 songs. You have any blood-sucking freaks-related music, John?
Yeah, I have a 3-hour song cycle devoted to that one topic.
What?
As you do.
No kidding?
Wow.
Maybe you and Jericho can put your heads together for something later. You okay with that, Chris?
3-hour epic blood-sucking freaks tune. I'm in. I'm in.
All right, John.
I'll plug in the air.
All right, well, something to look forward to as we continue with the Joel M. Reed classic, Blood-Sucking Freaks. And Chris, would you agree with me that the cannibalistic naked women in cages look remarkably good for being in a state of
They
starvation?
really do.
All right, back to the movie. Roll it. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier is, remember the scene with the white slave trader who comes in and gives Stardew $1 million?
Yeah.
The slave trader dude is Alfonso de Noble. whose regular job was as a bouncer in the only gay bar in Paterson, New Jersey. Now, anybody from Jersey knows that Paterson is probably the roughest town in the state.
Yes.
And as you can tell, Alfonso was morbidly obese. But he can also be seen in the movie Alice, Sweet Alice as the grotesque pedophile landlord. But so when he worked the door at the gay bar, he wore chains and leather, you know. But then in order to make extra money, he would change into a priest costume in the daytime and hang around cemeteries. And the widows would come by to pay respects to their dead husbands, and they would ask him for a blessing, and he would accept donations. This is how he supported himself, quote, you know, for the church. So Joel Reed used Alfonso twice. He was also in Night of the Zombies. But Alfonso was another early victim of bloodsucking freaks. He died in 1978 at the age of only 31. So let's have a moment of silence for him, for the best 500-pound character actor in New Jersey in the 70s, Alfonso de Noble.
The movie was cursed. Probably gonna miss the first couple minutes of Monday Night Football. It's all right. We got 4 quarters, but I do want to see the New York Jets play. It's gonna be starting up real soon.
You know, besides being gross in a...
I actually want to see how much time is left. Holy shit, we got a while to go. We do got a while to go. I'll probably be missing like the first quarter.
Guillotined, and then she becomes the first person in history to give.
I didn't know this episode was gonna be so long.
To a dwarf. And first of all, Illahau had been discovered by the director who made a movie called End of the Road, which was filmed inside a mental hospital. She was one of the patients in the hospital, so she got a part in the movie. And then when she got out, she became an actress. Okay, and then that line that Ralphus says, open your mouth, I'm going to put something nice into it. That line was taken out of the movie and sampled by Prince Paul, the hip-hop DJ, also known as The Undertaker. He used it for his song, Open Your Mouth. And the whole song just keeps repeating that line in Ralphus's voice. Open your mouth, I'm going to put something nice into it. Now, I doubt most people who hear the song know where the line comes from. It comes right out of Bloodsucking Freaks. But Chris Jericho, Last Drive-In co-host, and I'm speechless. What did you think of the women in Bloodsucking Freaks?
This is gonna go on for like another probably half an hour. I mean, shit. All right.
Online petition. Once again, every break that we come back from has so much to talk about. First of all, Tucci, the detective, does he not look like David Berkowitz? Did David Berkowitz get a part in this too, along with everybody from the New York Theater Company of downtown Bronx? But that was one. The other one was the worst death, as far as nothing happens, is the girl getting stretched on the rack. Well, she gets stretched, and I'm thinking maybe in the script it was all 4 limbs get popped off, and they realized the budget just is not going to go for that. So she just gets. Obviously, the guillotine where we put the rope in your mouth and then spank you until you let go and have your head chopped off. That's really sick. Think about it. It's nothing, because they really work it. This poor girl is holding on, and you start thinking as a viewer, if that was me, how long can I hold on to this thing before you just say, I'm done? So that was an interesting part. And of course, Ralph is getting a fellatio from a head. Getting head from a head, shall we say. And just so, like, Ralphus, don't do it. And of course he's going to do it. I get something nice to put in your mouth, master. And then just
And you do that too well.
Well, just his voice is just so amazing. Small size oats. And the end scene that we just watched was the backgammon with some, like, they speed it up with some really weird, like, almost Benny Hill music, and they're just cutting girls' fingers off. And once again, they're not even reacting. They go like, oh, my finger. But there's just one finger. They're playing backgammon for fingers.
But a lot of times when people write about this movie or comment on it, they say, well, you know, Joel Reed recruited a lot of actresses from porn. But in 1976, there was no porn industry, so to speak. I mean, people made porn films, but it was the same people who did off-Broadway theater and worked in 42nd Street shows and worked in mainstream movies. I mean, there was really no separation. The New York arts community was still hippie. Mm-hmm. They were hippies, you know, meaning they thought sex was going to save the world. You know, sex, not war. So they were very free about things like full frontal nudity, just not a big deal. And I've done panels with actresses from that era, and I say, well, did you ever sign a release form about the nudity? And they're like, no, we were happy to take our clothes off. That's what we did. You know, it was only later that it became, you know, I don't know, more shameful. But anyway, my point is, half the women were from porn. This is funny to me. Half the women were from porn and strippers, but the other half were co-eds from Columbia University, because they put up a casting notice at Columbia, actually at Barnard, the sister school across the street, which is historically all women, and they got dozens of volunteers. So now, one thing I wanted us to talk about is the crossover between horror and wrestling, because I know Tom Savini's done a lot of mask work for wrestlers. I mean, I think some wrestlers only use him, and he's done makeup work for wrestlers. And you do some horror face paint, right? When you work in Japan, right?
Yeah, the Painmaker is the character that I created. But the thing is, whenever you try something new like this, the moment you walk out of the locker room into the area where everybody else is, there's always a couple seconds. Like if everyone just stopped and turned and laughed, that looks terrible. I went, rub it off. But I walked out, and because it's Japan, which is such a, you know, cosplay and anime and then J-horror, no one said a word. They're just like, oh, there's Jericho with paint on. So that's where the Painmaker came from, and started this whole new kind of side character that I've even done here in AEW when the time is right. When I need to be a little bit more violent and a little bit different from Chris Jericho, that's when the Painmaker comes out.
Okay. Joel Reed actually wrote a 2-page treatment for a sequel to this movie called Sardu Strikes Again. Fortunately, he lost it. But he said his inspiration for the movie was a real-life nude sadomasochistic ballet company in Soho. He claims that he went down there to see their shows, and the guy's name was Giles Fontaine, and he had a company of nude dancers, and he would get naked himself and whip the nude dancers. And all the nude dancers were actually his slaves in real life, and they lived in the theater. So not only did Joel Reed decide to make a movie based on that idea, he went and made a deal with Giles Fontaine to use his actual theater and slave quarters and house at 115 Spring Street. That's where the movie was shot. We got to go there.
Yeah.
You can't make this stuff up. Giles was Canadian, by the way. He was French Canadian, though. But
we're not taking credit for him.
You Canadians can get kinky. So, all right. On that note, back to the film. Oh, and I got to tell this story. When they had the wrap party for the movie, Joel Reed knew all these people in New York, so somehow they were able to have the wrap party at some big multimillionaire's triplex on Madison Avenue. And I guess it was customary in the wild 70s of New York City among theater people to have an upstairs room that was called the Freak Room, always stocked with cocaine. And you could do anything you wanted to do in the Freak Room. And so Viju Krim, who plays Natasha, comes to the party with her fiance, who they say looked exactly like Rod Stewart. So at some point during the party, the Rod Stewart-looking fiance of Viju Krim taps Joel Reed on the shoulder and says, "Have you seen my fiance?" And Joel had a pretty good idea that she was in the Freak Room. And because when he first cast her, he had invited her to dinner at his apartment. And in the middle of dinner, he said, "Viju, you're going to have to be naked in this picture." And she immediately went into another room, came back totally nude, and finished dinner in the nude to show that it didn't bother her at all. So she was not a shy girl.
The Joe Namath guy.
Sex
Speaking of the New York Jets tonight.
No!
So
was a stud.
Viju Krim was in 4 other softcore sex films, including Let My Puppets Come, which I believe is the only puppet-based porn film ever made, plus Eros Perversion, which is a porn version of the Shakespeare play Twelfth Night. Things were weird in New York in the 70s.
Yeah.
And then she became yet another cast member to die early. 1983, he told her to walk behind him as he was picking up a rifle to shoot a deer, and instead he got his wife right between the eyes.
Coincidence?
Coincidence, apparently.
I don't think so.
Viju Krim, author of the book How to Become a Successful Model. She wrote a book called How to Become a Successful
You know
Model.
what she was doing in the forest before that happened?
Yeah,
Having sex with Ralph.
Having sex with Ralph. She survived Sardu, but she couldn't survive the blood-sucking freak's curse.
All right. Monday Night Football with the New York Jets is going to be starting in just a few minutes. This next segment break is at 1 hour and 8, and it looks like we still. Let's see here. Probably a good 20 minutes left, maybe even still half an hour. So we're going to cover the rest of this episode, and then I'm immediately going to go watch the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. But that is the plan. It looks like we still just have about half an hour left, guys.
Okay, Chris Jericho, Bloodsucking Freaks aficionado. We haven't talked about Joel Reed yet.
Yeah.
What
This is one of the longer
Joel's
episodes that
writing
I've
and
seen,
direction?
though.
Once again, a very disturbed individual in a lot of ways. But, I mean, the subject matter notwithstanding, he's put together a pretty good film, in my opinion. I think the acting is good. I think the way it's shot, obviously shoestring budget, it's very dark at points. But the connection of Sardu and Ralphus really works. It's very much a Big Lebowski and Walter Sobchak, where these guys, you can tell they're friends, but there's a little bit of tension between them, which we saw even more so. I want to ask you a question when Ralphus says master about my billing. What does that mean? He wants a billing, is he talking about billing like he's getting paid, or he's talking about the billing in the show?
I think billing in the show.
In the show, is that what it is? Okay,
Yeah.
so he wants to be the star of the show.
Yeah.
And Sardu doesn't like this.
Yeah, but don't you think, in a way, Ralphus dominates Sardu? You know, Sardu's like sort of lets Ralphus get away with anything.
Yeah, the tail wags the dog on that one,
Yeah.
doesn't it? But as upcoming, we see that it doesn't quite go all the way for Ralphus. He doesn't come out of this too well.
Have you, you know what, I really think you ought to have Joel Reed on your podcast. He's a very entertaining guy.
I think it'd be great to do a watch.
Yeah.
Just watch the entire movie again and see what he was.
Joel, let me give you the 411 on Joel. Joel is 86 years old.
All right.
He was born in Brooklyn. He ran away from home at age 13. He joined the army, served in Korea, was stationed in Japan, which he loved because he said it was one big brothel at that time with thousands of cheap hookers. Then after the war, he studied acting for a while, but he ended up as a press agent in New York during the years when press agents, not like press agents today, they had a lot of fun. They were in charge of bribing people, bribing the press with sex and booze, and organizing a lot of cool parties and babysitting superstar actors. And so Joel kind of became the king of New York nightlife. He was the guy who organized all the orgies while he was working for MGM and 20th Century Fox and supper clubs like the Copacabana that were run by gangsters. And so he went out with every starlet in town. He dated Catherine Deneuve. He dated Maria Schneider right after she did Last Tango in Paris.
Jeez.
But because he loved the theater, he left the publicity business and he started producing off-Broadway shows. And his girlfriend for a long time was Yvonne Craig, Batgirl on the Batman. And he loved to hang out at the Brandt Theater, which was at the corner of Broadway and 42nd, and was the first exploitation theater in New York. He had a company that ran trade shows and booked private parties. So he knew every pretty girl in New York. He knew every powerful man in New York who liked pretty girls and pretty boys, for that matter. And at one time he had a van that he called the Instant Disco Van. And he could take it to any location, and two things would come out of it: sound equipment and lots of hot girls. So now, Chris, you can jump in at any time. I just wanted to give people this Joel Reed background.
Well, let me ask this. What other movies did he do? Is that
All
the
right.
ones in America?
He made 6 movies.
Okay.
Right? The first was called Career Bed, which was one of the worst titles ever. But the original title was Mother Love, about a woman who wants her daughter to be a movie star, and so she pimps her daughter out to every guy they meet in the film business.
Jesus.
Kind of a dirty version of All About Eve. And Jennifer Wells is the girl. It's the first movie of Georgina Spelvin.
Introducing Georgina Spelvin.
Yeah, he
Right.
discovered her. She would become famous as the star of The Devil in Miss Jones. And she plays a butch lesbian talent agent using a real name, Shelley Abels. These are about depravity, young nymphomaniac girls, and dirty old men. That was his point. He had this one formula.
And
was,
Broadway.
was right there.
Okay, we're going to skip ahead just a little bit here, because this is definitely going on a little bit longer than I'd like. Here we go. Looks like we're at the next segment break coming up here. Next segment break in hour 18.
Kung Fu ballet in the nude with repeated kicks to the face. It just doesn't get any better than that, right, Chris?
I mean, she's now become a Stockholm Syndrome victim. She's now become one of Sardou's slaves. She will dance for Sardou.
Although she looks kind of drunk in the scene.
She's a terrible dancer.
She's flinging herself around the room, kind of clumsy for a ballerina, right?
She's supposed to be like this hardcore, amazing ballerina. Maybe a steady diet of human flesh doesn't takes away some of your skills.
Maybe so. All right. Before we go to the Dick Dogs, I know you love the Dick Dogs.
Well, how could you not? Can I also make a little comment about Ralphus being so excited? Master, what about my secret Jew joke, Master? And he's so excited about it.
That's true. What was that about?
Oh my gosh, in this day and age, the Me Too movement would just crucify Ralphus before the movie even came out. Ralphus could not exist in 2020.
And there's something sad about that, right?
It is. It's a sad state of affairs that angry, drunken, murderous dwarfs don't have a place to act anymore. It bothers me.
All right.
So Dick Dogs.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things that possibly happened to Sardou. That's worse. That makes him pay for all the horrible things he's been doing to these poor ladies. He could get his head cut off, big deal. Pull his guts out, shoot, stab. But ripping his wiener off and then using it as a wiener while he's still alive watching.
Okay, we're not going to listen to the story about the Dick Dogs, but we are going to fast forward here, and now this is after the end credits, so we're pretty much where we want to be.
And so it ends with the notorious Dick Dogs. I think we had 4, maybe 5 beheadings just there in the final scene. And I've never heard of this before, but when the cannibalistic caged women was just off camera playing live piano to create ambiance for their friends. It may surprise you to learn that the critics were not nice to blood-sucking freaks, and time has not improved its reputation. I'll just quote one. Odious pieces of cinematic sewage ever conceived in the addlepated brain of a human being. Most of the cast, all of the cast, went on to well-deserved obscurity and or death. Luis de Jesus, who played Ralphus, was in Fanasex Island, once again doubling for Hervé Villechaize in the porn version of Fantasy Island. Viju Krim married an ex-con, got caught up in a stock swindle, went to prison, and as we mentioned earlier, was shot between the eyes by her third husband.
After like these 8 minutes, it should be the end of the episode.
Ellen Faison, Sardou's assistant with the straight hair, she made some more weird East Coast stuff like Dawn of the Mummy, but never made any money. Janice Beaver, the girl killed by electroshock, she tried to make it in porn. She was the first flight attendant in the opening of Misty Beethoven and Joey's wife in Kinkorama. She made 25 films in 3 years under 25 different names. Erica Wolf as the main girl in the cage, light brown hair, made 40 porn movies between 1976 and 1979. Her name in porn was Crystal Sink, and she was the girlfriend of Robert Kerman, star of the notorious Cannibal Holocaust. Jennifer Stock, the girl who gets stretched on the rack, was only in 3 movies, but one was actually a good role. She was the female lead in Michael Finley's Shriek of the Mutilated. Giles Fontaine, who had the nude sadomasochistic ballet company and army of slave girls in his basement, the inspiration for the movie, ended up not liking the movie for a strange reason. He had agreed to let Joel Reed use his theater, but he thought Reed would also use all his slave girls. And Reed wanted nothing to do with any of them, and so Giles pouted the whole time they were filming. Another interesting factoid, Oliver Stone was hanging around the set throughout casting and filming. Broadway premiere, but all the women in the audience walked out. The movie kind of languished for 8 years, and then Lloyd Kaufman changed the title to Bloodsucking Freaks and released it through Troma, and he now claims it's the only movie that he picked up that he would probably refuse to distribute today. He says it's only become more disturbing with each passing year. This didn't stop him from creating a 54 show to the MPAA to get an R rating, but then he sent the 91-minute version to all the theaters without telling the MPAA he was doing that. So they found out, sued him, and he was never again trusted by the ratings board. He's very proud of the fact that the movie played for a year and a half in Allentown, Pennsylvania. When he released it in 1984, it was at the 8th Street Playhouse in Greenwich Village. So the manager of the theater thought he could drum up publicity by calling up Women Against Pornography and pretending to be offended by the film. So Women Against Pornography took him very seriously, picketed the theater, and caused so much trouble that he did have to pull the picture out of release. Bloodsucking Freaks was the inspiration for many a punk band and for Richard Lehman, the splatterpunk novelist. He wrote a book called Out Are the Lights that was inspired by this movie. Okay, Darcy, come on out. Thanks for your amazing job.
Our lovely male girl.
Landing Chris Jericho for the show, working the social media, going to the AEW match. You always go above and beyond. You were also responsible for getting Kelly Maroney to fly in from LA to do Chopping Mall with us.
I wouldn't have been the same without her.
No, you're killing it in our first week.
Thank you.
Are you a fan of Bloodsucking Freaks? I'm guessing no.
Have you met me? I love this movie.
Okay, good. Well, we finished the first episode of the second season, and the first episode is always the hardest. We got to establish a rhythm, right? And it feels like decades ago that we did the Darcy Prom with Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2, which turned out to be one of our most popular episodes ever.
It was an amazing night.
Okay, what do you have in your mailbag for tonight?
I'm actually very curious to see what you have to say about this one. It's from Brandy Bree of Otter Tail, Minnesota.
Okay. Joe Bob, my husband loves 3 things: horror movies, your show, and me. I have a suspicion that I fall in that order. Despite this, I watch The Last Drive-In with my husband every Friday. I have to admit, you're growing on me. That being said, can you help a girl out? In all the hidden horror gems that you find, there has to be at least one with some romance. And no, Cat People doesn't count. Romance, Joe Bob, romance. If anybody knows a good horror flick with a little romance, it's you. Brandy Bricks. Good question. Depends on what kind of romance. I mean, there's like Lifetime Network romance, there's Hallmark Channel romance, there's Natural Born Killers romance. I'm going to say that horror is going to fall mostly into the vampire category, because vampires are usually in love with their victims, right?
No, not necessarily.
Well, but a movie like the Gary Oldman Dracula or Twilight.
Ew, no.
Okay, then tell me what you think is a romantic horror flick.
Actually, any horror film will get me in the mood for romance.
That can be true. Does Bloodsucking Freaks get you in the mood?
Oh yeah.
Really? Cannibal Holocaust, does that get you in the mood?
Will I get in trouble if I say yes?
No. Torture porn?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Bride of Chucky might
Kiss
be
of
a
the Damned.
romance
That would
horror.
be a good one.
Yes, it
Also,
would.
Bride
Okay.
of Frankenstein.
Well, Brandy, I gave you some choices. Darcy gave you Cannibal Holocaust, so there you go.
Scream.
Of course, Scream. Yeah, everything is Scream with you.
Because it's the best movie ever made.
Okay. Woman is standing naked in front of the mirror in her bedroom.
All right, that is gonna do it for our 2 episodes tonight. I am about to watch Jets on Monday Night Football. We're already about 10 minutes into the game. It'll probably be about 30 by the time I get there. We're going on 8:30 here in New York time. So, ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampire wolves, thank you so much for being here with me tonight. This was season 7 of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob. We watched episodes 1 and 2 tonight, Chopping Mall and Bloodsucking Freaks. My apologies, of course, for skipping through some of the episode there towards the end here, episode 2. But we're already going on about 3 hours here on our stream for YouTube, which is kind of longer than some of your favorite Hollywood movies themselves. So if anybody has made it this far into the video and the stream itself, thank you so much for being here with me tonight. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace, God.